Hello, BNB show. My name is Brandon. This right here is Brendan. That is Seahawks Brendon Nelson back in the house here at the Hawks Nest on my end of things after a couple months away. Went over to your side of things last week. Brendan, it's good to have you back, man. Feels like we're now fully back in the flow here, back with you on the channel here as we could do these shows again as we did throughout the last couple of years now. How's it going?
Oh, that's right. I'm happy to be here. I'm having a good day. Thank you for having me over here.
It's been a mellow training camp, man. As we were talking about last week, it's been pretty quiet, which is kind of what you want to hear for the most part. Just good hard work, everybody competing. Things getting a little saucy at times, so the intensity's there. But it has been pretty overall just smooth sailing throughout the course of this early part of training camp, has it not?
I would say for the most part, that's true. We did have the only rookie semi holdout in the NFL, I guess. But other than that, it's been kind of business as usual. I do see some people saying, we got all these injuries. Why is everybody getting hurt? But I really think that if you look around the NFL, every team is having things like that happen, and it's an unavoidable part of a sport like football.
Yeah, especially if you're going to have them going as close to full speed as Carroll's practices are supposedly known for going, of course, which is that they go 100 miles an hour at all times, and that's going to probably lead at times some of those injuries that it makes it a little bit more understandable. We have gotten a couple guys that have gone down in Whitaker, who they released today, and then we had Blunt go down. Did you have any updates on Joey Blunt, the safety who was carted off the field yesterday?
All I know is he didn't practice today, but they haven't really said too much about it beyond that. I'm a little wondering why, like, we haven't got an update on Damian Lewis, because he's now missed a couple sessions in a row, and I don't think played in the mock game. So I'm wondering what's going on there. Wondering what's going on with Derek Young. We know he might have a sports hernia, but they haven't really gone into more detail. So there are a couple things that we could stand to maybe get filled in here, but overall, I feel fairly good about where the team is headed into the preseason.
Me too. And these injuries, as far as what we can tell from them, nothing seems to be season-ending of the variety of anybody that's a real important player at this point. You're due to get everybody kind of back at some varying place during the course of this preseason / maybe just the early start of the year from Jamal Adams on downward through. But it is it's definitely something to track, I guess, and monitor as we go forward. We did have ourselves a little bit of a scrimmage game this past Thursday, and it's been interesting reading some of the tidbits taken away from it. I watched some of the tape, Brendan, myself. I'd love to have your take on this, looking at the cut-ups and trying to read into it too much, but I came away with only a couple of real small amount of things that I came away from the game I thought of being notable. It was all pretty dry, I guess is the term I would use. How did you see it?
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good way to put it. It's not like last year. Last year, we didn't even know who our quarterback was going to be. We didn't, to a certain extent, we didn't really know who our running back was going to be. There were a lot of questions about the roster that we don't have this year. We didn't even know who our tackles were going to be last year. It was, are we going to go the rookies? Are we going to go the veterans? This year, there's nothing like that. We've got some interesting battles, but they're more like who's going to be the fifth wide receiver? Who's going to be the practice squad tight end? Who's going to be the long snapper? Stuff like that. I will say of the things that we saw heard about, because you didn't see much of it in the mock game, Boye Mafe, he continues to be, they keep calling him the most improved player from last year. And that's a big deal because we had a need at that position, that other edge spot opposite Nwosu. That was important, because we were betting a lot on Mafe being massively improved from last year as a pass rusher. And it seems like that has happened. So that's one of the things that stands out to me on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, even though this is maybe kind of a weird thing to say, because it doesn't seem like it'll be super consequential, but I'd say Cody Thompson, because he's kind of the forgotten man in this receiver room. But every time he's called on, it seems like he does stuff positively. And especially now with this Eskridge situation, I think that we can now very safely say that he is probably going to make this roster for at least the first 6 games. So I'm mindful of that kind of stuff.
You think he's got Bobos and or Landers?
Well, Landers, from everything I'm hearing, is not really a football player right now. He's how should I put this? He's just an athlete. Like he can't really run routes. He can't really do anything other than just run really fast in a straight line. And I'm getting the sense that he's the definition of a guy you want to put on the practice squad. So I'm starting to feel like that's probably the case. We know Eskridge is going to be not on the 53-man for the first 6 games. And if you're looking at it in terms of wide receivers, DK, Lockett, JSN, probably Derek Young, although, by the way, watch out for that sports hernia. That's no joke.
No, it is not.
And then that 5th guy, there are a few different guys it could be, but it seems like Thompson is the standout right now.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I was just kind of probing a little bit of where you were at on that, because I think the Derek Young thing, as much as anything, is probably going to assure Thompson ends up at least being on this roster. Is he game day active or not? I don't know. We'll see on that part of it. But Eskridge is out 6 weeks. And then Derek Young, if it is a sports hernia, it's going to be a 6-week injury on that one as well, I would believe, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then that you start going numbers game. You go Tyler Lockett, DK, JSN. And then it's down to really, isn't it, down to Bobo Thompson at that point? Am I forgetting another name in this mix here that I should be? Cade Johnson, I guess, is technically
Cade,
still on the roster.
Yeah, Cade. I think that's basically it. Because you got the 2 rookies. I guess you have Tyjon Lindsey, who's another rookie, but I think he's a clear number 3 behind the other 2 rookies. So I think that's pretty comprehensive in terms of wide receiver stuff. And yeah, it seems like even though Cody Thompson isn't as talented or as intriguing as a guy like, say, a Matt Landers or Jake Bobo, or I would say even a Cade Johnson, it seems like he's just better than them at the end of the day. And that's what matters here. So feels like he's going to make it. I know it's not of huge consequence, but it could end up being of some minor consequence, right? He's on the team.
Well, it isn't too, in the respect of, let's think this through a little bit. If we know D's out, we know Derek's out. The problem opening here becomes the slot receiver position. Was JSN's lighting the world on fire, which is a magnificent thing, and hopefully he can remain upright throughout the whole course of the year, so that this isn't a problem or discussion we have to have very often. But if he goes down, your backup plan's been Eskridge. And if Eskridge goes down, your backup plan's been Derek Young. If Derek Young goes down, you don't really have a backup plan in your receiving core to go 4 deep at a slot position. So you do kind of have to scratch your chin a bit and go, okay, what are we going to do to get creative? If you have a functional guy like Cody who's been developing in the backside sidelines a bit, could be interesting to track what he does, especially if he lights it up in the preseason, Brendan. If he goes out there and he's going to get a lot of run. Lord knows that. And if that happens, maybe it is a guy that you end up seeing with actual snaps on the team, and we'll see what he can do with that when that happens. Like you said, when he's been given the opportunities, it seems like he's taken full advantage of them. What else did you kind of have as far as some takeaways out of this game?
It's mostly the standard stuff you would kind of expect, like just as one example, Metcalf looks good, right? But that's not surprising. That's not breaking news. That's not exactly a bold proclamation there. Let's see here. Maybe Draymond Jones, but again, that's another guy who we know is very good. We know how good he is because he was good in Denver for years and we gave him a lot of money. But hearing about some of the stuff he's doing in the backfield is encouraging. And it sounds like he's good so far. And I know this doesn't mean a ton yet because we don't even have our starting running backs for a lot of training camp, but seems like he's good against the run, which is the main reason why a lot of people in the football world thought he wasn't an elite defensive lineman yet. He wasn't considered to be a good run defender. So if we end up unlocking a little bit more from him in that run defender category, I think that's a big deal and it'll make this team all the better for it. So I would say that is another thing that stands out. And I guess the final thing is the stuff we're not hearing about. I haven't heard anything about our long snapper this entire training camp or in the mock game, which must mean he's doing his job, right? That makes sense to me. If he was missing snaps and sending it over the punter's head, we'd probably hear about that. So I guess he's good. And if he's good, that means we don't have to go out and spend that extra money on a veteran long snapper.
That is usually something reporters will note if they talk in press. If they've got there's a bad long snapper, that's something reporters will jump on with 2 feet. They're not shy to bring it up. So that's good to hear because that can be a problem you don't expect to come up, but you don't appreciate it. It's like insurance. You don't appreciate it until you need to use it. The thing that I thought was interesting with Draymond Jones, to your point on that as well, he was having his press conference today talking about, acclimating to Seattle and that the coaching staff is already allowing him to take his shots. And to me, I tend to speak in shorthand of that of I'm going to get the opportunity on a play to have a given responsibility, but you can trust that I'm going to read the play correctly in order to jump, get maybe into the backfield a little quicker than I would have been able to if I stuck to my responsibility and just guided this down the line of scrimmage, so to speak. And I think that's really encouraging to see the coaching staff do. There was cut-ups that I saw from Quandary being able to have that opportunity to do that last year too. You want to hope that you allow Bobby to do this as well, because this is what you didn't have kind of before with some of the youth in this defense, which is that you have guys that can recognize what they're seeing across from them, who aren't going to get fooled, who aren't going to get misdirected, who are going to be able to say, hey, I've seen that 10,000 times. I know just what you're trying to pull off here, and I'm going to be all over this kind of play. It's part of what having a guy like Michael Bennett back in the room here, teaching these guys the past couple of days, that's part of what made him a really good player, is that he had some good physical stuff that he brought with the first step quickness, ability to use leverage, his hands. But it was also kind of his knowledge of when he could take that jump snap, when the guard next to him would be going to hit a reach block. And so as long as he just ran full speed off the snap and shot that gap that way, this other guy trying to get to his block couldn't reach him, and he could get into the backfield and cut it. And it was almost as much as his brain kind of guided him on that as the physical ability. And it seems like that's been Draymond's somewhat of a comp to him a bit. It does seem like that's what Draymond's bringing now too. What do you make of the Coby Bryant move to safety?
I think it's a pretty nice way to promote versatility in the secondary. I like it. It may end up being his best position in the NFL, by the way. That's pretty easy. I have heard that he's one of the guys kind of getting beat up in camp by these receivers. He's just not quite quick enough, it seems like, to keep up with them at times. And we've got really good receivers, so I don't know if you can say anything too bad about a guy getting beat up by our receiver room. But I do think that there are some physical limitations on Coby Bryant that make it so he may end up finding his destiny at safety. Like his main positive trait that we've seen so far is his ability to attack the ball, like doing the Charles Tillman punches, forcing all those fumbles. He forced fumbles last year that didn't even count for one reason or another. He actually had like 6. So
couple interceptions too.
Yeah, that were taken away for one reason or another. And if you put him at safety, that might allow him to use that even more, because he's kind of got the whole play in front of him and he's coming downhill instead of chasing receivers. That may end up playing to his strengths. And I mean, more than anything, I think you're just trying to promote some versatility in a secondary where it's hard to get playing time if you're not one of our top guys right now. It's going to be hard for a guy like Coby to get playing time at corner, I think, because we added Witherspoon on top of guys like Woolen and Jackson, who's having this great training camp, and Julian Love also is a slot guy potentially as well on top of the safety stuff. So you just kind of want to give him every opportunity to get on the field if and when somebody gets hurt. So I like it. I think it's a good idea.
Any worries though about the fact that you're, now moving a guy for the third time, into the third position now in 3 years, and that, that there's maybe a bit of a harming in the development of doing all these things where he becomes essentially, hopefully you're hoping, a jack of all trades, but if he's not allowed to really settle in at any one given spot and get good at that spot, how good can he get if he is being moved all over the place?
And that's always a possibility. But my question would be, is he being moved or is he just being utilized for more flexible methods? Because to my recollection, in that mock game, he was a safety with the backups, but he was also playing cornerback with the starters. So he was doing both. It's not like he's getting moved so much as his role is just getting expanded. And what I would say is I'm not so in love with Coby's, even his potential as a cornerback, to where I feel like we're losing out on something really, really valuable if he ends up stunting his growth a little bit at that position.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point with it. It's just the thing that I do wonder in this is that you moved him to a place in the slot that he'd never played before. And, if they are, I think there is a bit of, you're right that they're doing this from a position of strength, but there is a worry for me too, that it's playing in NFL's hard. And, we've done this at times in the past with bumping the guy all over the place. And I guess it kind of worked with Britt when you eventually did this before, but it just seems like more of a road to kind of a guy eventually getting out of the league because he just can't find a position. And then you come back to it and you go, yeah, but could he have found a position if he just was given, this is what you're going to be here at the NFL level, safety or a slot. But he does bring at least that Tillman punch to play, which is certainly something you can use. Safety position, slot, outside corner, you can find a use for that on the football field. Again, to your point on trying to get him a pathway to the field if you need to at times. And you look past Julian Love and Jamal Adams, especially the Joey Blunt injury now, you don't really have anybody in the third rung there at this point in time.
Yeah, it's Jarek Reed II, who may or may not be ready.
Right. And he may be more of a free safety than a strong safety, really, when it's all said and done, as far as that being his best position. Austin Cassman, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you, Austin. He says, anything enlightening from the unofficial depth chart?
Yeah, I did take a look at it. It's pretty boilerplate, I think. It's exactly what you would expect. I didn't see anything there that gave me pause, except the only thing I saw on that I kind of looked at twice was Monet's currently listed as the starting nose tackle, which I think is just kind of paperwork because we know he's still on the PUP, but he was listed as the starter. And then Reed and Jones were the starting ends. And we're being told that Reed is going to play nose tackle, but I don't necessarily feel like that means anything. There's a reason why it's unofficial.
Yeah, I don't give it a lot of weight, Austin, too, when it is in this unofficial status. And I think even if it is a coaching staff saying, here's the list of guys, it's going to be a list that's going to change potentially in a big way within a couple weeks based off of injury and how guys perform out there in training camp. And then you have also those positions that are locked in that we know what the depth chart is. You know, we can go through the receiving core and say it's an A, B, C, D. We can go through the running back room, A, B, C, D, E, tight end room, A, B, C, D, E. So I don't think there's any of those things changing at those positions. It gets segmented to just the certain positional groups. But we got to get through, I think, a little bit of the preseason games to get anything that we feel solid about making predictions on that or where things will go with that. So, yeah,
Right.
I don't think there's anything. And I saw nothing odd as well, Austin. Nothing that was jumping out to me. It looked pretty. The boilerplate's the good word to use on that one. Thank you, though, Austin. Appreciate the donation. James Mack, thank you for the $10 donation. I appreciate you, James. I hope you guys are all having a great night out there tonight. A fine little summer evening here, nice and temperate. He says, bleeding green and blue since 1982. Get ready. The Hawkpocalypse is coming. Well, thank you, James. I like the sound of the Hawkpocalypse. I think that'd be a good name for this upcoming season. If we call it the Hawkpocalypse, I think we'll be feeling pretty happy about the end result.
Yeah, I can get behind that. That's pretty good. 1982. That was that's actually a pretty good time to start bleeding green and blue because you're just 2 years before the best season we had before the current era, right?
That's right. No, we got the magical year. We went down into the Dolphins and beat Dan Marino on his home turf. And that was Knox got a little bit of success through those 80s times. You got a little taste of it. James, like me though, then had to go through the dark 90s, Brendan. We don't ever want to have to go there again. It's like the Middle Ages, dark ages. You know what I mean? Everybody's dying on the streets. It was the Monty Python sketch, bring out your dead, bring out your dead. One of those things. So, it's props to you, James, for hanging in there as long as you did. I'm right around the same point, a couple of years, a little bit later, but I hope you're right, man. I'm feeling really good about this upcoming season, as positive as I felt about this team, as optimistic as I felt about this team in kind of some years going back. I think the only thing that I worry about is the youth and how young they are, but I do think that they have the talent. And I do think they have the ability, and that's of course injury too being a worry, but that's really the only thing I think that really prevents them from topping out in the grandest of fashion this year. And that part we'll see about.
Yeah. The reality is anybody can get hurt at any time for every team in the league.
Yeah.
So there's only so far you can go with that.
It's always got to be something you put into the italics on the edge of it. But talent wise, this is as talented, as good a group as we put together, including the Super Bowl years. I think you could even say this is the benefits of putting this many draft picks this closely together and then seemingly finding success in just about all of them, at least at the top that you picked. This is how you build these kind of teams, because so many teams still build really good teams, but they're missing hit. Okay, then we got to sign this guy and sign that guy. And then, okay, now we're kind of good. You're kind of looking like you're hitting picks all the way through. Is it Cross, Lucas, Walker? We'll see about Coby Bryant, I guess. But then you got Tariq Woolen, you come back for him. And then it looks the same way this year with JSN, and Devin Witherspoon appears to be. We do got to worry again about that hammy now, Brendan. The hammy's back to biting him again here, which has got me worried.
Yeah, the implication is that it's pretty minor because he was running around on the sideline. He just wasn't taking part in team drills. Some people think that we're holding him out because there's a game this week and we want to make sure he can play in that game. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I often do say hamstrings are something that can go on for a lot longer than you expect, or sometimes much shorter. But there's a lot of variance there that can't be accounted for, and you just have to wait to see how it heals.
You really do. And that's the worry I have with this one too, is that they can linger. They can just as quickly go away, but they can be sitting there on the back of a player throughout the year, and you're just trying to manage it through, and the player never feels like he can turn it up to the full extent at that point and go all the way through. But nonetheless, we're hearing good returns from both those two young guys. Derek Hall 2 days ago finally sounded like he had his best day of practice. Brendan,
Yeah, he was quiet for a while there, but yeah, he apparently had a really good day. I think it
couple
was,
sacks.
yeah, I think it was either yesterday or 2 days ago.
That's right. And he
Very
had been
encouraging.
quiet. He had been kind of
Mhm.
quiet up until that point throughout this camp. It'd been just not a lot going on with Derek Hall at that point.
Yes.
So it looks good, man. Looks good, James. I appreciate the donation and Hawkpocalypse. I might have to put that on a t-shirt. Might have to get that set out there on a t-shirt there on that one.
I don't think that gets copyright claimed by anybody, right? It's different enough from anything else.
As long as you just don't use the logos, man, that's the key. So I got my store going now, or my little Etsy store going for it. So because I got the logo redone on mine enough, so it's not looking like it. But
Cool.
maybe I'll have to throw the Hawk. I might have to steal that one, man. I'm not throwing you any royalties. I'm just taking that one, bro. So, yeah, there wasn't anything else I thought that was really much more notable out this. We did have, of course, the beast mode curse came up and did a little bit of a nipping, like a little dog, like one of those little short dogs that come up and get you at the back of the ankles. As we saw McIntosh get his knee twisted up a little bit. Doesn't sound serious, but we continue to.
I was a little confused by Pete's language. He said he may miss a couple weeks. I don't know if that meant a couple weeks was the best case scenario or the worst case scenario, but it sounded like it's actually the worst case scenario, which that'd be great. That means he's back for the preseason even.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. Sometimes it's to a youth thing where these younger guys can get back seemingly a little bit quicker, with what they do. And then if you're an older guy, it's going to take you a little bit longer to get it around. But hopefully he can stay healthy, because the back room has been 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out, 2 out, 1 in. It is what it is with that. But hopefully he can, Godspeed, get back very quickly. We haven't heard much anything else from the interior with the pads on. Bradford, Olawatimi's kind of getting the case to coffee there at times for starting over Brown. Sounds like Brown's still a little ahead of him, though.
That seems to be where things are trending. I mean, and I'm fine with that, by the way. I want to be clear about that. I'm really excited about Olawatimi, but I do think Evan Brown proved to be a good player when he played at center a couple years ago. So
I think we can acknowledge you can be steady in there for us. And as much as anything, we need steady. We need not below league average. You're not going to blow up the whole play from the inside every time we try to do anything, because our center can't hold up in there. I think he can, at the very least, Brendan, bring that on into play here and make that kind of work. Well, let's look a little bit forward here into this upcoming Minnesota game a little bit. And I'd be interested to know, when you walk into this game, two different things. Where are your eyes drawn on the field to what you're looking for? What player? When you can kind of watch the game, but we all in preseason at times find ourselves kind of going into one guy and what he's doing, even if it's for a couple snaps before you drift to a different player, and you're still watching the game, but you might be this is the battle I was kind of wanting to lock in on. And then from a team standpoint, what maybe are you looking for them to be doing? Is there anything in specific in that you'd like to see them lock into?
Well, I think the thing that stands out right now is what the team is doing schematically to, even if it's not for the specific players, because I don't know if they're going to be playing on Thursday, are they going to set those players up to be successful? So what I'm talking about is offensively, what kinds of formations are we using? Are we using 3 receiver sets more than we did last year? Because last year, I think we were in the bottom 5 or maybe bottom 6 of all teams in the league using 3 receiver sets. And then you draft a guy like JSN at number 20. Talked about this a lot already, but the way you make that pick work, the way you make that pick a good pick, is you get JSN on the field a lot, and you do that by going to 3 receiver sets, because you're not going to take Metcalf or Lockett off the field. That'd be silly. Those guys are really good, and they're paid a lot of money, and they've been good for you for a long time. So I want to see what the offense looks like in terms of pre-snap formations, who they're getting on the field. Now, I don't know if any of those guys are even going to play in this game. I've heard that Geno won't play, so maybe those guys don't play too. I don't know. But even if they don't, I want to see how often we're going to these 3 receiver sets. I think they call it 11 personnel, where you have the 1 tight end, 1 running back, and 3 receivers. And then defensively, it's kind of the same thing. I want to see man versus zone. How often are we running man coverage? How often are we running zone coverage? There was an interesting interview with, I believe, Aaron Schatz, formerly of Football Outsiders. And he was dropping several insights about the 2022 Seahawks. And one of the things he said is that the Seahawks ran more man coverage last year than they ever had by a wide margin, which is very contradictory to what PFF actually had when they were looking at coverages. So I don't know who to believe there. But either way, this is another example where you take Witherspoon number 5 overall. If you want to get the most out of that pick, you have to start running man defense. And that goes, by the way, for Tariq Woolen and Julian Love and Jamal Adams as well. If you want to get the most out of these guys, you got to play them to their strengths, which is man. So those would be the two things I'm looking for on Thursday.
Yeah, I think that's a good number of items to look for, and I agree with you. The man coverage stuff would be really good to see. I think there's a little bit of differing opinion here, Brendan, because I was doing a video on this yesterday with a Tariq Woolen on man match, which is cover 3 man match. So it's, if you're trying to make an assessment blindly of a team and you're looking at the all 22 on a man match situation, you could be seeing the guy dropping, back into coverage, and you go initially, oh, he's in a cover 3. But then he ends up jumping the route. And then you go, well, he freelanced on that, but that they were in cover 3 coverage there. And then he freelanced into it. But if it's a man match there, of course, there's a directive on the play to match up with that under route there to go with that guy. And so that probably leads to these people that, depending on the differing eyes that are looking at it, is whether they're going to make the assessment of whether that guy was in, technically zone or man. But I would agree with him that, especially when it comes to Tariq Woolen, the team leaned into those concepts heavily with him over the course of the season and let him kind of free range roam. And you got to get the best out of this defense by what they do best, like you just said. And that is coming downhill, being aggressive, playing man coverage. You're in a 3-4 defense. Brendan, doesn't all this stuff just marry together? I mean, it really just does, doesn't it? Do 3-4 man-based corners and guys that can blitz from the inside around the box. And you've got the stuff now. You haven't had that stuff in the past to do it. Now you've got the parts and pieces to make it roll.
Yeah. This defense has been built to run man, as near as I can tell. With the guys you've drafted, the guys you picked up, like Julian Love. I don't want to understate this. I think this is important here. He was on the Giants last year, who ran man more than anybody, I think. It was
That's
them
right.
and maybe
They always will. It's
Yeah.
Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale
Yeah.
defenses will always run the most man in the NFL. Or
Yeah,
like
and
maybe there's one other, but
yeah, he had a monster breakout year too. So he excelled in those circumstances. So you're going to go out and get him. You got to put him in the right situations.
You do. And I'd say the one thing we didn't talk about in the scrimmage that I did notice in some of the cut-ups was that there was a lot more of the stack box play showing off. There was a lot more of it seemingly defenders down around the line of scrimmage, as opposed to us seeing a lot of the too high situations going on there on the tape. And this again leads us back to you can blitz off this, you can run the man-based stuff off this, you can pressure stuff a little bit more, you can clean up the run game more because you have extra bodies to do it now if you go in that direction of things. So I do hope they lean into it, Brendan. You and I have been for a while on this, but we do know as well this does go very hard against Coach Carroll's DNA at his core of what he wants to do and how he wants to operate his coverages. So if he does it, it'll be maybe his coup de grace stroke of genius at the end of a great coaching career. But if he doesn't, then it's him again doing a little bit of the slamming circles into square holes and not knowing why they're not fitting, if it's on the other end. I think Drew Lock, like you mentioned on Geno Smith, he's not going to get played a lot. Do you share my feeling on what we need to see Drew Lock play a clean football game?
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice. He's getting put in a pretty good situation. Maybe not so much in the preseason, but in general, it seems like he's in a pretty good situation when you're talking about the players around him and the offense, I would say, because the 1 year he was good in Denver was the year he was in a very Waldron-like scheme. That was one thing that was talked about when we acquired him, that when they moved on to the Fangio era, that offense that they were brought in really didn't work well with Drew Lock. And he was kind of coming back to a system that would probably work in his favor when he came over to Seattle. So you put all these things together, you take a look at the situation that he's in. And I think that I think that we do need to see something pretty clean from him. I think last year when he got out there in the preseason, he had already missed a game, the important game, really. So he was probably pressing a little bit. We talked about that. And that's fine. But this year, I would definitely like to see a turnover-free game from him. I think he can do it. I think that this offense should make for a lot of easy opportunities for completions. You just gotta hit him. And in this game, he may have the opportunity to play with the starters. It's possible. I don't know, but at least some of them, right? I don't think every starter is going to sit. So at least some of them.
Well, it seems like to me, if I can understand not playing Geno. He's an older quarterback. He's going to have to play 17 games this season. Yet there's no reason to really, with where he's at, to feel like you have to run him a lot. Drew, on the other side of it, to me, is a guy that didn't get to play a lot preseason. You mentioned that some of that was out of his hand and out of his grasp, and then he had to press in the third game. But I think you do want to have this guy who has now not played a lot of football here since leaving Denver and losing, I think, even that job halfway into that year. Or he didn't play partially that year between, I think, him and Bridgewater. So just he needs to play probably a little bit more football here. We need to get him a little bit more onto the field running through. And I think just at the head of it, though, to think about whether this guy can be a guy we go into future years, past this year, beyond, of if no other team wants to give this guy a starting opportunity, do we feel good about him being kind of your de facto backup every year, where there's like a new contract every year you're coming up to him with, or you're saying, here's a 1-year deal, we'll give you a couple more million than league minimum. You're not getting your starting opportunity, but you're knowing that if you do go in with Geno going down, Geno being an older player, the potential opportunities there. To me, though, you've got to have a little bit of a certainty to know he's not going to be a guy, though, that if I put him out there for 4 games, there's going to be those 3 moments in a game where I'm going to be looking at him going, what were you doing on that? What were you thinking on that throw?
Yeah. I kind of feel like he won't be back here next year, though. I feel
I
like
do too.
next year's QB draft is going to be really good. And I know we say that a lot, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But no, really, next year's QB class, I think, is going to be really good. And you know that thing where Schneider says we want to take a quarterback every year, and every year we just forget to do it, I guess, because we never do it.
Mm.
I think this might be the year we finally are like, oh yeah, we should probably take a quarterback because we keep telling people we want to. So I kind of feel like Drew Lock. I mean, we're not going to carry 3 quarterbacks in all likelihood. We've done that like once or twice since Carroll got here. So I feel like we're going to be going a different direction next season. But I mean, while he's here, we may as well get try to get good things out of him. For all we know, he has to play some this year. So yeah, of course.
Yeah, I agree with that. Your thoughts onto the quarterback class, I think, just to build on what you're saying with that too, is it's a strong quarterback class, but it may not be a strong quarterback class as far as there being a ton of first rounders. It may be that you have only 2, maybe 3 first rounders, but it looks like a strong class to me from the 2nd to the 4th round, and really, really deep in that range. Like there'll be a good amount of guys taken in that place. Would you say that's fair in your view of it early on too?
Yeah, I made my preliminary watch list. I had 15 quarterbacks on the list. Now, some of them are the true blue chippers who we're never going to be able to draft no matter what.
Mhm.
But there's good depth in here as well. There are definitely quite a few guys, and I didn't even include some of the guys that I'm not quite there on yet, like Deion Sanders' kid. A lot of people are talking about him. I don't know. I'm not there yet, but he's somebody who could absolutely become that guy later this year. There are a lot of guys in the currently ranked in like the 5th or 6th round range on the aggregate that could become guys this year. So I really feel like this is going to be a great draft if you're looking for an heir apparent / long-term backup.
I think too that the reason they've not gotten to take one every year like he's intended to do. Don't you think some of that's been a bit of an extension of the fact that there's not been the talent there in that range where there's a better player if they're on the value of their board over the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, that they didn't go quarterback because the value was there was so much of a better player on their particular board at that spot, 2nd round, 3rd round, than there was really a 3rd round rated quarterback that they felt good at. If we look at some of these guys that have gone later in recent years, in that 2nd, 3rd round range, who's really taken off, as a 2nd round quarterback in that time or 3rd round quarterback in that time. I'm sure there's probably been like one, but you would have had to have like pulled out the needle out of the haystack to make that thing happen.
DTR looked good in the Hall of Fame game.
We're both on DTR though.
Yeah.
That's DTR would have been the guy both of us I think would have been on favor for. But where did DTR go?
Was he 4th or 5th? I mean, I don't think he got picked until day 3. I'm pretty sure about that. But even then, like, I understand that the players that we did take, like, I know we both don't love Cam Young, but Cam Young is going to have a bigger impact for this year's Seahawks team than DTR would have for sure.
I agree. And I think Schneider knew DTR was kind of the one, him and Stenson at the end of the draft, maybe Jay Kaner you throw in there. But There wasn't a lot of guys in this draft. He already had the look-see to next year's draft, and the Drew deal had been signed already. You had walked in knowing that deal was done. So you really want to sign. What you want to do to me is when you make that pick in, let's say, second, third, fourth round of a quarterback, beyond it being a quarterback of the future, you're really picking for a guy that maybe is almost like an asset. Because I think Schneider goes back to his Green Bay days on this, Brendon. That was Green Bay's whole thing back in the day. They had Favre, but they would constantly be loading up. They'd build a guy up, get him all valuable, and then they would trade him and get assets for that guy. And that's what he's really doing at the forefront, beyond it being, here's our next quarterback of the future guy we're looking for. So I do think next year's year they do that in. I think this year you do roll with Drew Lock, but it's in our best interest. Drew gets a lot of play here. There's always the outside chance too here, Brendon, too, that something weird happens in the next couple of weeks in some training camp. Contender has a quarterback go down, and you just had Drew Lock come off the edge of playing fantastically over a preseason period. I'm just saying, things can turn in that way too. So I bet he gets a lot of run here in this preseason.
Yeah. Who's the third quarterback? It's Holton, right? It's still Holton.
So
I don't think we see anything there. I mean, you play him a little bit because you have to, but I don't think we feel obligated to give Holton any reps because, that could be a guy who makes our team and becomes our. No, I think he's just there because he's there.
Emergency is what he's there for. I don't think they see him in that way either. So we'll see how it goes with it. Megan, thank you for the $5 donation. Good to see you in the house. Hope you're doing well. Says the only time I will brag about my age is when I say I'm 4 months younger than the Hawks' first game in the Kingdom. We got some OGs in the house tonight, Megan. OGSs, or should I say, in the house tonight. It's good to see. And nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. You just got the extra wisdom of all those years as a Hawk fan. You suffered through the brutality and the horrors, and now you get to enjoy the delights, as they say, Megan.
Yeah, it's been mostly really good ever since Paul Allen got involved.
It has. We've been really lucky after all that time of going through bad ownership to have the good ownership in there that, understood what it took and got it done. But thank you, Megan. Appreciate the donation. Roy Frolic, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate it as well. He says, release Ryan Neal and then move Coby Bryant to safety. What the F?
Yeah. That Ryan Neal thing is the one thing we did this offseason that I can't defend and I don't think can be defended. We just needed the $2 million, I guess. Even though with the restructurings we've now done, we actually didn't. So I think we just messed that one up. I think that's really all that needs to be said about that one.
Do you feel too? I don't know. We've not heard this, but I don't know that we would have heard this if this was also the case with Ryan Neal. Because I share your frustration. I share Roy's frustration with this, and I'm not happy about that either. It was like you had cheap club control, and this is what you aspire to do with guys when you get them in like this. When you find diamonds in the rough, is to have the cheap club control so that you can round out the roster and spend in other ways to build a Super Bowl contending roster. The thing I wonder, though, here, Brendon, and I do come back to thinking that this is something that'll be eventually a part of the truth we'll hear about, is if not that Ryan Neal said, yeah, I'm heading into a free agent year and you've got me third on the depth chart. How does that work, Coach Carroll? How's that going to work with me now going out and getting a contract next year? And yeah,
he said that wasn't the case. He said he wanted to be in Seattle.
Well, then I take him on his word at it. Then it's one that just continues to be one that you scratch your head and you don't get. Bryant, I think Brennan's got a little bit more of a level-headed minded approach with Bryant to safety than I do on this one. I get frustrated moving these guys around. I hate doing it because I think it, number one, does hold them back in their player development. It doesn't mean that it crushes their player development or prevents them ever from reaching their top end, but I think it at least slows them down. And number two, to me, it doesn't show always a lot of foresight in your outlook and view of what you want to do with the player. It's like you're kind of figuring it out as you go along. And maybe that's just that he's not as good as they thought he was going to be to play on the outside or play into the slot. Maybe that's what it is. But that's the part, I guess, those two things do frustrate me a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's just, I don't think there's any defending that. I think we just messed up and it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just ain't gonna ever make a lot of sense on that one, Roy. And it sounds like he's playing pretty well for the Bucs in their training camp too. I've seen a couple cut-ups or at least a couple little tidbit tweets out about him making some plays back there. So probably is going to help out the Bucs this year too. On top of a little salt in the wound, Roy. Salt in the wound. Chad Hart has been a member for 7 months of the Hawks Nest. Thank you for that, Chad. I appreciate that long time support, brother. He says the two best YouTubers on the Seahawks stuff. Good stuff, dudes. Well, thank you, man. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Chad. Thank you, Chad.
Very, very kind of you to say, man.
Mhm.
And thank you for all your support on the channel. Appreciate you guys being longtime members. Very, very kind. Again, too, we got Seahawks Brendon Nelson in the house. Do get over to Seahawks Brendon Nelson on YouTube and sub up to him. We'll be doing 2 shows a week here throughout the course of the season. The ZX with a $5 donation. Thank you, ZX. Says, Brendan, why do you use 2002 to 2011 logo on that Excel chat? Hi, Brandon. What's
Just
up,
kind of
Z?
like that logo. I don't know. I just think it's neat.
We get our preferences with age, ZX. You know, we get used to certain things. We get tired of the constant, ever-changing world. We just want to hold on to stuff that we know.
Right. Yeah, it's also my background for some of my streams and stuff. I have the 20 the OO's logo.
Okay.
And I don't know, I like it.
Yeah. Well, we all got our preference. I'll use out the old logos too at times. So
Yeah,
you know.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'd get, kicked off the internet if I was working for the Orioles and had the old logo or something because they fire people for
Jeez.
everyone, I guess. But
Yeah,
the
that was
Seahawks, the Seahawks don't seem to have a problem with it.
people rallied around the kid though, man. They got it. Isn't that so
Mhm.
cool? All the national announcers were like, "How dare you, Baltimore? How dare you do that, kid? He was just being honest. Is this what we get it for being an honest journalist in this world?"
Yeah, very weird.
Appreciate you though, ZX. Thank you for that, man. Long live the Excel. Long live the old logo. Well, we're bringing the old back this year, so
Mhm.
maybe it kind of fits. Megan with another $2 donation. Thank you, Megan. She says, but I became a true 12 when Pete came from USC. Well, that was a good time to become a true 12.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. You know?
Yeah, I remember at the time, I still felt like we kind of did Jim Moore Jr. dirty. Like he took over a terrible team. You let him go for 1 year, and then you're like, get out of here. Like I was like, man, that's you got to let that pizza sit in the oven a little longer. You can't just crank it up to 1200 degrees and let it sit in there for 3 minutes and then pull the pizza out. But hey, it worked out. It worked out, no doubt about it.
I'm with you in that I think that there are almost every situation you ever encounter with a head coach struggling in his first year, you enter into that situation and you say, you know, you've got to give this guy more than one season, almost regardless of whatever results you get that first year. But I think you would agree that there is going to always be those cases where you can see and walk away from and go, that this is the exception to that, where this guy was so bad, this is going in such a wrong direction that I have to let him go. Hackett being, for instance, another, that'd be a firing that I support the more firing, and I support that Hackett firing there with Denver because number one, they went for a bigger swing and a better coach, but he wasn't the right guy after a season. It doesn't mean it was his fault or that he just you know, I think in a lot of ways, like what Peyton did to throw him under the bus recently was, you know, kind of doing him dirty. But
Yeah.
I think that can also be the truth with also the fact that he wasn't the right guy for that job. And,
Mhm.
you know, Mora just had some moments there where he just wasn't the steady hand on the controls that you need at times, you know, and to ride through the storms on things wasn't there with him. And I think that's why he also hadn't got another NFL job, you know, and that he then
Yeah.
went to college and didn't quite suit out in college, is that, you know, just that was kind of where he was. And so it was tough to do it, but there was also the opportunity to get a Pete too with it, Brendan, you know, where you're going to be able to get a Pete guy if you waited another year. He failed out, was a Pete like candidate going to be sitting out there for you
Right.
to go, you know, try to sway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was definitely the right thing to do, but I remember at the time thinking to myself, he actually improved the team by 1 win. I know that advanced metrics actually said the team got worse, but he inherited a 4-win team, and they were under him were a 5-win team. And I was like, man, you wanted a big turnaround really quickly if you're firing him already. But again, it worked out.
Well, and then that's also the 4-win team the prior year, though, came from having a lame duck head coach trying to run the waters. I mean, that's why you don't see teams do that as well, where this guy's going to be our head coach for the final year, and then we've got his successor sitting right back there. I'm sure it'll work out fine. And that no one ever does it that way why don't they? Because it's stupid to do it. And because it leads you to probably not getting the best out of your team, you know, when running through. But, you know, it was beyond the stats for that with Moore or the wins and losses. It was just the energy of the team and his guidance of the team and his direction and vision just didn't seem like it was going to work. But again, too, I think it's the Pete thing. It's also him knowing that Pete was going to leave USC at just that time because the sanctions were coming down. And so if he was going to get Pete, it was going to be now. And he wanted a big splash candidate if he was going to move on from Holmgren. And Mora, you can say what you will about him. He's not a big splash head coach. You go from, Holmgren, Carroll, Mora. One of these things doesn't look like the other, right? And I think that was with Allen, a big part of what he wanted was coaches that had the sway a little bit. I think he believed in that being a necessity to make it work. If you didn't have the gravitas, you couldn't make it go. Thank you though, Megan, for the donation. Garth Knight with a $5 donation says Brendo brings up a great point. Paul Allen does deserve a ton of credit. It is a testament to great ownership. He does indeed on that. I think that we don't give him enough credit, Brendan, even us guys on this that do this content creation stuff on YouTube and talking Seahawks often. We got a great break when Paul Allen brought the team and took us from not being LA based to a new stadium to then putting all the money behind it to get the team wherever he could get an advantage as far as to spend money. If he needed to spend money, it could be give him a private jet, the best facilities, the best, getting him new Renton put together, like whatever it took on that to get a little bit of an edge, the acoustics of the stadium, getting that built so that it would be at its loudest. All of that stuff just this is sort of what you kind of daydream about and what you want for an owner, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, when people talk about the forces that made the Seahawks team turn around from what they were in the 90s to what they've been since basically the turn of the century, they always talk about guys like Holmgren or Carroll or Russell Wilson or Marshawn Lynch, but really it's Paul Allen, isn't it? Like that's the inflection point for this whole team for the last 25 plus years.
Yeah, you don't win championships without strong ownership. There's no such thing if our owner was just a horror show. Dan Snyder's aren't winning Super Bowls. Al Davis, once you got to a place of, kind of the smarter people being able to take over and it not just being as wild as free as it was in the late 70s, he didn't find any effectiveness anymore after that point. As he got into the mid 80s and onwards, it was done. And there's a lot of other, I think, examples kind of that a little bit of that ownership is not just this pocketbook that walks in and writes a check. It's also a guiding light at the top to go down. And if you have somebody that's weak or just sort of buying it like it's one of their little horses in the stable, then that's how it's going to come off. That's what you're going to see as the end resulting project. And I think Paul Allen really, truly did care. I always go back to Brendan, the story of John Schneider having to, write up after games to John, the notes on what happened in the game and why things occurred, and then submit it to Paul Allen. And I would measure to guess that there's not a lot of owners that would require that very kind of similar thing from general managers.
Yeah. I mean, that is pretty cool. I actually did not know that one. That's pretty good though.
Yeah, no, I heard it was like eye-opening because I was like, that's an unusual thing, but it speaks to Paul Allen part of why he's so successful in what he did and why he was good at what he was that he was in on the details like that. He wanted to know. And so hopefully it seems like Jody's kind of navigated the waters through pretty well overall at this point. Can't deny she chose the right pick between the Wilson Schneider Carroll thing, that she picked the right horse in that one. And, hopefully she's going to continue to carry it on in his legacy in the way that he did, which would be great. It's good to see him spending some money with the Uchenna Nwosu deal and converting base to bonus, Brendan, to create some more cash to spend some more money, which has been the thing that, I've harped on a bit with my worry with her. And there's not necessarily being her problem or fault, but just because of the trust, them being, hamstring by it. But it looks like they're, still willing to spend a little bit, which is good to see.
Yeah, there is some reason to be encouraged. The last couple weeks, I'd say, in particular, we've seen some encouraging signs.
Very, 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 very encouraging. Thank you, though, for the donation, Garth. I appreciate you as ever, man. The ZXQU, why 90s throwback jerseys? Bad memories. Use 80s.
Yeah, I did admit that when the throwbacks were announced and shown, I was like, as somebody who started watching the team in 1996, I associate those jerseys with not so great things, even though they are good jerseys still.
They're fire jerseys, but I don't disagree with you, man. If they would go to the 80s, I would have been even more on board in that area of things. So, hopefully this just opens the door to them using more of the throwbacks. I think all of their jersey iterations have been pretty nice. So, I mean, maybe the early 2000s were the best ones. Yeah, but I would love it if they did. So it just sucks that we're only getting 2 games too. I'm hearing about the store being sold out there, Brendan, and they're having a hard time, keeping stock. It's like, this should be telling you something. Should be letting you guys know maybe they want more of this, like more on Sundays, game days, But thank you, ZX. I agree with you, man. I do agree. And ZX with another $5 dono. Z, thank you for all the donos, brother. It says, call me Z. Z it is, my man. So speaking of old school, ground chuck. That's when I became a 12, living in South Dakota. The ground chuck was an original, man. He was an original.
Yeah, and
I know it's before your time a little bit.
Yeah, it was. But you got to say, overall, he did the right things. It was the right system to have in that time, in that era, with the players that he had.
Think of it too. He came here. He's coming to here really still a fledgling expansion franchise. It's only been about 6 years along when he finally gets here. So 5 years along, and you don't have really the purse strings of other franchises throughout the league. You're not considered one of the blue bloods. You're not being set up as an expansion franchise for success early on. You really had to grind it out, and he had to come in here and really instill that in a way from the bottom up, which was impressive for the success that he got. And really when it comes to Chuck and reaching his kind of upper end success, I think the missing of Kurt Warner as being your Eric Dickerson like player on that team, you beyond anything else you could make, that was the thing that ended up keeping you from having that team be a team that could compete for Super Bowls. If he didn't shred his leg after year one and could go out there and just go full bore throughout the course of his career, he could have been a dominating Hall of Fame like player. Does that maybe change some of the trajectory of that team in the mid to late 80s? Maybe so.
Yeah, that's very possible. The long list of guys who had injuries rewrite their career arc and therefore a team arc as well. So maybe he's just another one of them that gets kind of forgotten because that Seahawks team never made even one Super Bowl. It's like if you make one, it feels like people think more about the what if nature of things.
It is, but I think that it can't be understated because of how extreme Ground Knox's system was. It was wholly built in an era that was running back based. He was the distilled epicenter of an offense being running back based. And you didn't just take Kurt Warner in the first round. You took him with like the third overall selection in the draft. He was that high as a pick. So, when that one basically crown jewel of your building developed and goes to hell after one season, it's hard to go find that other top 5 running back pick to this put right in there. And now you don't miss a beat and you're good to go and everything's, recovered without you missing a step. And they were always kind of chasing that a little bit. It felt like, and Warner still was okay, Brendon, but you just dragged that leg a little bit near the end.
Yeah. Speaking of ground chuck and Chuck Knox and all that, there's actually this one YouTube channel that is uploading old NFL games and kind of remastering them. I don't know exactly how they're doing it. They go into details in the video description, but making them look better than they did even at the time on TV. And one of the games, which I actually watched recently, was 1979 Vikings in the Kingdome against the Seahawks. We won on a buzzer-beating field goal. So that was actually pretty cool to see some of that stuff because, of course, that was well before I was even born, much less watching. So some pretty cool stuff, by the way. If you guys in the chat want to go check that out sometime, he's got quite a few games uploaded on his channel from like the 70s. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I highly recommend it too, because football was played in a different way back then. You don't have maybe the athletic, beauty you have now, where the guys are as fast, but they were playing also with a certain different type of, to me, I just think back to Brendon, like these guys played the 2-a-days. These guys were padded practices throughout the mini camps and stuff. It's like, okay, you are wearing those guys out. Their bodies don't last as long. They're injured probably more because they're being beat on as much, but you were also probably kind of creating a tougher, more well-crafted player, you could argue too. And there's no substitution for putting on the pads and striking and hitting and knowing how to operate off of that physicality that you really can't, to me, duplicate when you're just in your shorts in a gym or a room or whatnot. That's what makes it fun for me is those guys they get physical and mean at times. I still like going back watching it from that side of it. UPO with a $10 donation. Hey, he says, we got another OG in the house. Always love the show. Thank you. Thank you, Yupo. And welcome another fellow OGer. Got all the OGs in the house tonight. Says, always love the show. Here's a fun one. Greatest offense, defense player combo on the same team in Seahawks history. Steve Largent and Kenny Easley, Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson. I'm going to let I'll let Brennan's first answer this one.
When people talk about Kenny Easley, they tend to talk about him in very glowing terms. Like they most people who watched him play swear he was better than Earl and better than Cam Chancellor. And I mean, if that's the case, then he's one of the greatest safeties ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you do the math there, assuming you give Easley that kind of credit, I think it is Largent and Easley, because when Largent retired, he was considered at least a top 3 receiver in NFL history because he owned every record pretty much when he retired, right?
I would say he was the number 1 wide receiver at that time. Rice was certainly coming on strong and looked like the guy to be the heir apparent to take it. And he did, of course. But if you look at it, everything was kind of the receivers that had those records were all in various places, and Largent kind of brought them all under one umbrella, which then cemented him then as that number 1 receiver of his in the sport.
Who was the guy on the Packers who had 99 touchdowns and he was almost invented the modern receiver position? Was it Don Maynard?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, like he was the number 1 first great receiver, and then I think Largent basically beat all his records, and he was the number 1 receiver, I think, in NFL history when he retired. So I think you got to go with that, because if you're combining that with Easley, now then you have Wagner, who I think is probably one of the 5 best middle linebackers to ever play.
Agreed.
And Wilson, I mean, at this point, is Wilson even a Hall of Famer is the thing.
Man, I was just asking you that question.
Yeah, he's our best quarterback ever. Sure. And quarterback is very important to football. But if you were to make a list of the greatest quarterbacks ever, is Wilson top 30 even? Is he top, like, where?
Hold on, you answer your first question. I need an answer on you dodged off that first question you raised, which is the one I want to know from you.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting to here. How many quarterbacks are in the Hall of Fame? You look at those quarterbacks, you compare them to Wilson's resume, you think about how they got into the Hall of Fame. Like, what would be if Wilson gets into the Hall of Fame, what's he coasting on? Basically, the first 10 years, he was the winningest quarterback ever in terms of regular season record, right? It's not the stats. The stats are really not that remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but Kirk Cousins will probably retire with better stats than Wilson. He'll have way more touchdowns. He'll have more yards in all likelihood. Mm-hmm. So it's not the stats. It's not Super Bowls. He's got 1. You got plenty of guys in the Hall of Fame that have 2 or 3 or 4. It's not going to really be anything other than that. And I think we all know, even the people who really like Russell Wilson can tell you that the main reason why he had that great record was because the first 4 years of his career, he had the number 1 defense, which has never happened in the Super Bowl era before for any other team ever. So you put it together, I don't know what the Hall of Fame argument really is for Wilson anymore. So I don't think he does unless he has a renaissance in Denver and at least extends his career out a little bit to where he can get those volume stats, get up to 400 touchdowns, get up to, I don't know, 50,000 yards, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a guy that's on a bubble spot as Russ. Some of it's probably determined on if other guys that are maybe in the near production point, like an Eli Manning, for instance, if those guys start getting in, does it become a little more certain Russ gets in? But the thing with this is this, Steve Largent was a Hall of Famer when he retired, and you knew it. Kenny Easley was, he retired early, but he certainly put up a Hall of Fame pedigree, and Bobby Wagner, absolutely. I think that the fact that we're not certain that we can't have that same kind of, oh yeah, it goes without saying he'll 100% be there, answers that question to me in the way that you answered it, and that it is Steve Largent and Kenny Easley. I do land in that camp of you just discussed, of the camp that says, I love Cam Chancellor and I love Earl Thomas, and I'm not denying what they did and their impact and how good they were. Maybe 2 guys that eventually we'll be talking about Hall of Fame as well. But Easley didn't play a long career and got in the Hall of Fame. So he didn't have the longevity stuff he fell back on. He got in there because of how impactful he was in the 80s. And you just can't undersell the guy. Could have played free safety, strong safety. He returned punts. He was big. He was fast. He had ball skills. I mean, it was a Madden creative player in the mid 80s from the safety position, basically. And so I love Cam and Earl, but Kenny was kind of on a little bit of a different level, So I go that one. I go the first one as well. And it's not throwing
Yeah.
shaded with Russ. I hope he does get in the Hall of Fame, but I do think,
Yeah.
like you said, he's probably got a little bit more to do. There's
Yeah.
probably a little, just get another year or two if you can.
Yeah. I don't think he will. And honestly, if he can't build up a little longevity here, he shouldn't. Like Eli Manning's, that's a very, very niche case, right?
Mhm.
I think we all understand that as a player, Eli Manning doesn't belong within 100 feet of the Hall of Fame. He was a decent starting. He was about as good as like Vinny Testaverde,
Yeah.
but he won 2 Super Bowl MVPs, so he has to get in.
And in
Like,
New York.
yeah. So therefore, it's just one of those things where he met some criteria that guarantees him a Hall of Fame spot, even though there's nothing else about him that says Hall of Fame other than, I guess, his longevity. And his longevity wasn't even that great because many of those seasons he was bad and he just kept his starting job because of what he had done before.
Yeah, I with you. I think he gets in, but I don't think he deserves to get in. And it is one of those weird little spots, but interesting to see what Russ can do on that. He's on that line and certainly going to be driven to try to get over the top of it. But that is the question in hand, I think, right now from the voter standpoint. And that legendary defense, like you said, isn't going to work in his favor when it comes to that consideration.
Yeah.
You know, they'll be remembering that legendary defense that he got to work with through that early part.
Yeah. And you know, some of the voters, if he doesn't turn things around this year, some of these voters, it would be more like 6, 7, 8 years from now, are going to legitimately believe that he was never any good and Carroll made him look good. Like some of them are going to think that. It's obviously not true, but
yeah,
some of them are going to buy into that, especially. And while it's not true, he kind of deserves it if he can't find a way to have success this year with Sean Payton, right?
Well, he's been given everything he wanted and asked for. So yeah, that is kind of the case. You know, this is what you wanted. This is what when you submitted a list 2 years ago, this was one of the coaches that you were propositioned to saying this should be the guy. So, well, you know, whether it's fair or not, you're right. That narrative is going to exist out there. And it doesn't take a lot of these reporters that think that way to keep a guy out if that's where they stand on him. He's going to be a bit divisive, I think, in retrospect to the career in that respect of things. You and I both value his time here and what he did. So this isn't throwing shade at Russ. It's just, this is in the nature of answering the question. Cause I know there's some folks that get very sensitive about the Russ talk cause it just sounds like nothing but shade, but it's more just trying to talk about where he is and what's realistic about where he's going and what he's doing and what he's got to do if he's going to reclaim back. So most importantly, what's required here if he's going to bounce back. And it isn't just Sean Payton coming in there and magically fixing everything on it. He's going to have to take those steps forward too.
Mm-hmm.
Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. I do appreciate you, Garth, on all the donos. Says, Brando, the most notable lingering hamstring injuries in Seattle sports. I have Edgar and Sean Springs. Yeah, boy. Edgar's eventually took him off the baseball diamond. Mm-hmm. They were so bad.
Yeah, but he still managed to continue to have a big impact on Mariners teams going forward. It's not like it cost him his career. Quite the contrary, in fact. Sean Springs is actually a pretty decent one because that was a very hyped guy who, I mean, he was a good player, but we didn't really do a lot with him.
No, yeah, he was a guy, one of those tightly wound athlete guys too, where they tend to be the ones where it's just, you know, sinewy muscle. It's like 3% body fat, and they get the pulls, they get the yanks, they get the, you know, the grabs on that. So those are probably the two good ones. I just remember with Edgar always having the wrap on his leg. And then when he would run, it would look like he was cross country skiing when he would be going around the base pads, you know, just you could just feel him just trying to like protect the back of his hamstring. He was running and, you know, please don't pop, please don't pop, please don't pop, please don't pop. But who else? Maybe Galloway too. Galloway might have had a little bit of the hammy things going a little bit at times too. He's another one of those kind of athletes like that. It was kind of a little bit tightly wound a bit. He'd have a little bit of hammy issues.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other ones in like basketball. Nothing really comes to mind though.
No, none of your guys rolling the rock on that were bad, and I can't think of any other baseball players that had to deal with it as far as anybody else goes. So it's not actually a very long, illustrious list of hamstrings. We could probably go to a deeper list of guys that have had issues with probably, you know, ACL tears or the like, you know, more than that.
Yeah.
We do go with our hamstrings in the Pacific Northwest. It's not like the South where it's, you know, you get dehydrated with the heat, so you can always stay hydrated and keep everything flowing down there.
Yeah. Very important.
That's what were you going to say? Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about how I think it was Andy Reid who came up with the idea to drink pickle juice when you were playing
Mm,
football in really, really high temperatures.
that's
That's how
right.
he kept his team hydrated. That's what you had to do when you played down in like I think that game was in like Florida or something.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and yeah, you get down those Florida teams, make you wear the dark jerseys, and you got the sun,
Hmm.
and you just get dehydrated quick, man. You go through so much fluid. So smart of Andy Reid, kind of on that one, picking it up there with that. You think they'd have some new age thing by now, right, Brendan? Like they just have this. I know Gatorade's kind of, or they have these sports drinks, but they all seem like when they break them all down, they're just sugar water. When they really boil it all down, like electrolytes and HB, and then when you really break it all down, it's just actually crap for you. Like, don't they have something these athletes can take that'd be like, liquid IV or something? You know what I mean? Just like pure rehydration instantaneously or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's isn't that like the IV thing that they have on some players, kind of
It
like
is, but then
that.
they got to put the IV in. Like, isn't there something you can just, hey, give me a shot of that thing, and I'll be right back to snuff, no problem. You just think they'd have something like that in play by this point, but we're not
Yeah.
quite there. I'm just a futurist. Megan, thank you for the $5 donation. Appreciate you on all the donos too tonight, Megan. Thank you so much. Says Brendan, watch that game too. We didn't get them down here. So I've been having a blast, especially watching my favorites, Zorn and Largent. How was the Zorn Largent connection in the game you watched?
Oh, I mean, it's good. It's always good. This was 79 too, so this wasn't like his rookie year or anything like that. It was when he was already kind of in his Pro Bowl swing. So you got to say pretty good, although it does. You got to say things got better when Dave Craig got there overall, at
Oh
least in terms
Lord,
of the day to
you,
day.
you're gonna trigger Megan. she thought she had you signed up for the Zorn love, and you just threw her the curveball, bro. You threw the old Uncle Charlie on that one. Um, no, that's cool. It was largely looking like a difference maker too in that game? Did it? Some of the games I've watched that he definitely could, even back from that, then you go, oh, this guy's definitely different from the other guys in the field and what he's doing.
Yeah, I would say so. It doesn't stand out in the same way that like a Tyreek Hill stands out today, or
Yeah,
even a Justin Jefferson. But I mean, the production is the production, right? And nobody produced like Largent until Jerry Rice came along.
that's true. Nobody produced like Largent until that damn Jerry Rice. I gotta go check out that game though, man. I was here tonight. I'd heard, I think something had been recolored, but I didn't look into it deep. But I do want to definitely check it out because that's some of the problem trying to watch some of that old tape at times is that it's not clear enough. You don't need the HD, but everything's like a fuzzy, box, and you've got the lines going over the top, and you're like, I can't really see what's going on here in the game. I think that was a completion. The ZEX, thank you for another $5 donation as well, man. Appreciate all the donations tonight, you guys. You are awesome as ever. Says should be Throwback Thursday night. Old Jerseys channel is Fort Knox. Oh, Fort Knox doing that stuff. Yeah, he does some good stuff with some clips too, man. I like his stuff over there. Kind of his
Okay,
jib
yeah,
on those.
that sounds right.
So I didn't know he did that on the thing. That's cool that he did that. That's awesome. It should be Throwback Thursday night football. All old jersey. I agree. And more old jerseys. However, we can give them Thursday night football. Whenever we get them, I'd love to get the Niner game be a throwback jersey on Thanksgiving. I just the more the better. For some reason the team seems pretty ardent on this. I don't know if they're pushed by the league to only keep it at a very select point. We had to wait years for them to just have the opportunity to do it. And there also seems to be this group of Hawk fans that love themselves the highlighter uniforms that don't want to release them. No, we got to keep the highlighters too. Get rid of the Wolf Gray. Buy Wolf Gray. Give me a highlighter.
There's this one, I think it was '09. I think we had one game we wore like these orange jerseys. Do you remember that? Or did I fever dream that?
No, you're right. That was the Mora year.
Yeah.
You did they were highlighters, but they weren't the full highlighter. They were like the evolving Manda full highlighter, like
Yeah.
you had gotten into you were just before the Homo sapien phase and you were you were at the mid highlighter spot, I guess. But yeah, that was those were even worse than the high. I'll take the highlighters over those. You weren't winning football games in those jerseys. Nobody was.
Yeah. That I mean, I think it lasted one game. Like when a jersey only lasts one game, you did something wrong.
Yeah, it's the designers getting fired after that one. To understand, if you go back and look at them, they're pretty bad. They're really rough to look at. Like you played a whole game in these, like not even halftime. You're like, what are we doing here? What's going on here? But ZX, thank you for letting us know on the channel. Fort Knox doing that recolored old channel, old school games. And I'm glad YouTube's letting those games flow out there and be played out there, Brendan. You know, sometimes NFL's been tough with the content on that, letting those kind of, but when it's that old, and what's the loss? You know, what do you let them sit in the vault for? You know, I think the NFL should do it, frankly, with all the old games pretty much that are from 70s or 80s. Just keep it at like 30-year difference. You know, like how like the government will declassify stuff after a certain amount of time and all that. Just do that. You know, it's like, then you've gotten your value out of it.
Or it's like how when a copyright expires after 100 years, it becomes public domain.
Exactly.
Like any movie made before 1923 just gets posted on YouTube. Like a few years ago, I watched A Trip to the Moon, and it was on YouTube, and there's no issues because that movie was made in like 1902 or something. Yeah. So maybe it'll be kind of like that.
I'm maintaining that it would be all the more better for the NFL. It would be all the more, it would help the product out. They would have more interest than ever if they did that type of stuff to make it more, you know, available for fans to be able to view that old stuff. And they will eventually, I think, but they're still that old school approach to it. This is also the same organization that sells Madden to EA every year solely thinking that that's the smart decision to make, you know? So,
yeah. Did you hear they're finally putting in features that were in the game 25 years ago this year?
They've been doing that move for years though, too. You know, that's been an argument. Yeah. I'm not surprised they are. Look, I don't buy the game, but if the franchise mode's workable to a point that I can play around and like show things, at least, you know, like what we do and talk about stuff to where you can show like, here's something to show why this trade, if I do this, or if I'm in a game and I try to do this, I can show you can do little things like that like there's some inclusion to it. It's just been the franchise mode's been broken. The whole game's been broken in recent years. You couldn't even use it for that in that manner. So they're supposedly putting stuff in. I'm not buying until I see reviews and see what's up with the franchise mode and that they've actually honestly dealt with things.
Yeah. I'm still not getting it, to be clear. I don't have, nobody has time for that.
Yeah. Oh, you wouldn't under any certain, what if it was awesome? What if it was just like,
if it was awesome, then I would probably do it, but I just don't believe there's any incentive. Like Madden is still a huge moneymaker for everyone involved, even if most people don't like it because they get the people who spend 40 grand a year on mud.
I can't blame you, man. You've been beaten year after year, like many of us in this respect, and you're tired of getting beaten anymore. And you're like, give me the stick. I'm going away. Like they've lost a lot of people's confidence, and frankly, rightfully so. You know, they've crapped out a product year after year, and eventually that's going to catch you and bite you in the butt. You know, I'd love to see a great football game, though, man. As much as it would rob me of a lot of hours and time, I would love.
If I was going to play a football game on stream, I'd probably emulate like Madden 05, which was my Madden. That was the Madden I spent a lot of time on. Or NFL 2K5, which is the one that a lot of people swear by. The one that had TO on the cover, which I actually have never played. So that would actually be kind of interesting.
It was a great game. I haven't played in a lot of years, but it was easily beating the hell out of Madden that year it came out. And you went, here we go. This is a game that, you know, gets it. And I don't know, this is supposed to be the make or break year for Madden. So if it is bad, it's supposed to be the year where they're like, okay, everything back to the drawing board and, you know, we got to figure it out. So maybe there's hope for it down the road. I don't have a lot of faith though. For instance, even the NCAA game coming out, it's going to be MUT mode NCAA is what that's going to be.
Yeah, it's just one of those things like every now and then I'll see a Madden clip on Instagram or Facebook, and it's always something like, oh, this guy took the snap with Jalen Hurts and started doing his celebration dance immediately, and he breaks 800 tackles because there's a glitch where you can't tackle a guy when he's celebrating, so he's literally just mowing back and forth between the defense over and over again, and nobody can tackle him because of the glitch. And I'm like, this isn't fun. I don't know why I would want to play this. Or you see those plays where they have like 20 laterals and then they score the touchdown because you can just juke out every tackle no matter what, as long as you know what you're doing. So you can run lateral plays for like 10 minutes and then go score a touchdown. And it's just like, I don't know why I need to play this.
Yeah, I've always thought the online football experience, modern is always broken. That's why it's always, to me, come back to the franchise mode and that, because online people are going to try to find the glitchy thing they can take advantage of that doesn't look anything like NFL Sundays. It's like, what are we doing here? You know, I mean, then they'll just lean on the glitch over and over again. And you go, it's not fun.
And think about the craftsmanship there. Madden takes place on the same 120 yard by 62 yard field every year forever, right? Like everything that happens in the game of consequence happens in this field that is 120 yards by 62 yards, I think it is. And they have all these glitches. And then you play a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, which takes place over the course of this massive map that is like the size of 3 states. And you swear that game has less glitches than Madden. How does that happen? How is that allowed to happen?
Because they're in competition, and Madden's not in competition with anybody.
Exactly.
They just get operate in their. We own the franchise, so whatever we shoot out every year, people are going to buy, and we don't have to be held accountable. So hopefully this is the year, man. I'm hoping this year they're at least, whether it's good or bad, at least they're accountable, Brendan, because I would like to play it at least a little bit. It'd be fun to go back and be able to enjoy playing Madden again. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. Very much, man. He says, I hope Russell Wilson has the renaissance Brendo spoke of and goes into the Hall of Fame as a Bronco like Wade Boggs winning as a Devil Ray. Did Wade do that?
Yeah. Well, did you see the Tyreek Hill quote a couple weeks ago?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess it's possible, right? Like,
you don't go in the Hall of Fame as a team. You go in if you played for a bunch of different teams, they put you in as everybody gets put on the plaque. So you don't actually go in as the player can say, I'm going in as a this, but there's no real, like, the Hall of Fame recognizes that you're going in as a Denver Bronco and not a,
okay. Well,
so
I just, I think in order to get in, he's got to put in a little more volume. And in order to do that, he's going to have to play well enough to not, like I think you and me both agree that if he has a bad season again this year, they'll probably just move on. And at that point, his career's over, right?
I do believe it is probably over. I was having debates in my chat about whether or not Russell Wilson be willing to sit as a backup on a team for 4 or 5 years while he's waiting for one more opportunity. And my theory on that is that I don't think he would. I think that he's had a lot of other irons in the fire that he can go pursue if he's not going to be an elite starting quarterback. To your point on that, Brendo, and to Garth, to give you some hope in this, I know an ardent Russell Wilson backer. By the way, in baseball, you can choose your hat. So it's not the rule in baseball. You do get to choose which team you go in as. But here's what Russell's got to do to get in the Hall of Fame. And that is that he's going to have to play in a low volume offense, throw for 3,700 yards the next 2 years, throw for 25 touchdowns each a year, so add 50 touchdowns onto the resume, add another, 7,000 yards passing over the next 2 years, playing very efficient football, win more games than he loses over that time. Probably will be enough at that point to maybe just get him up over the top. And that's without him having to be Renaissance Russell Wilson, because I don't think that that's really a possibility at this point. But, I think that could get it done. That could be just enough to kind of get over the line.
Yeah, I mean, that would get him right around 400 total touchdowns, which, I mean, it's not as big a deal as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. And then you combine that with the Super Bowl, you combine it with the Pro Bowls. It's probably enough. It's probably enough, right? Like, at a certain point, you do look at the other guys who are in the Hall of Fame, like Kurt Warner, like Troy Aikman, like Joe Namath, and you start comparing them and you try to decide, okay, if this guy's in, so therefore we have to put this guy in. And I think that at that point, you would have to look at it and go, he deserves to be in there as much as Kurt Warner. He deserves to be in there as much as Joe Namath.
That's a good one, because Joe's stats are pretty rough. I mean, they're real rough.
Yeah, he's a guy who got in because he accomplished something that is impossible to keep out.
Yeah, and he accomplished it, and he did the guarantee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's sitting. It's the epic moment. He's sitting at the pool with all the reporters, and he's sunning himself. And like, how's the game going to go? He's like, I guarantee we're going to win it. And it's like, then he goes out and does it against the team no one gave him a chance against,
and did nothing in that game except hand the ball off.
Exactly. I know exactly. He made like 2 throws the whole freaking game. But yeah, that's going to probably be enough at that point, Garth, and we'll see if he can do it. I think Peyton, I do think, like Brendan finally said on this point, it's going to be tough for us because Peyton's not going to have a long leash on this one. He's already going to have to accommodate this offense to Russ, meaning that this isn't the Drew Brees offense. This isn't drop back on 3 5-step drops, make your pre-snap read and let it rip. This is going to be a lot of Russ under center, play action, naked bootlegs, and really Peyton having to extend away from his own personal playbook to make it work there with Russ, or try to make it work there with Russ. Does that wear on Peyton over time? Does that get him to a place where he eventually says, I don't want to alt my playbook for this guy who can't pick it up? How about I just go get a guy who can pick my playbook up? And I think there'll be a little bit of patience there, but I don't think there'll be a lot of patience there, Brendan.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, Peyton has been pretty positive about him so far this camp, even though there were several camp sessions where Wilson played poorly. And Peyton is not a guy who blows smoke. He's from the Parcells school where he will say mean things if he feels like it's warranted. So, I mean, I think so far things are going fairly well, but you're right. Once the games start, we'll see. I don't think Denver's schedule this year is that bad, so they have a chance to do at least something.
They do. And they do still have a defense coming back that's pretty strong. You lose Draymond Jones, but you do slide in Zach Allen, which is kind of a tit for tat move in certain respects. I think Allen's less than Draymond, but pretty close to the player there. The rest of the defense is still pretty solid. I think that they definitely still could go out there and make some noise this year. It just probably going to depend upon how they pass protect and how Russell does against the pressure holding the ball, getting those, getting those moments off. It's always the thing I go to.
I mean, McGlinchey got hurt today. Did you see?
No. How bad?
Yeah. He's apparently going to miss the preseason, and they expect him to be back for week 1.
Well, there you go.
It could have been worse, but if you take a look at their training camp so far, it's kind of got a season from hell vibe, doesn't it? I know they had that last year, but you can have 2 in a row. Like Uzurike getting, that was crazy too, because that wasn't just like he made one bet when he wasn't thinking. No, he's actually like a gambling addict. Like that guy's a big problem.
Yeah.
And then Tim Patrick, and then
Kenny Himmler.
And Jonas Griffin, the linebacker, who I think was going to start for them at least some of the time this year. It's actually not really gotten off to a great start in terms of a team for Denver. So they could have I think it's also possible they have a really bad season. By the way, they hired Vance Joseph, who I don't think has ever coached a good defense in his career. And he's just one of those guys who keeps hanging around, even though he's never really done much of anything. So that could go badly, because last year they got a really good season from Evero.
That was a weird one. You didn't keep Evero there. I want to say too, Vance Joseph was not a Fangio. Is he a Fangio guy? Is he a Fangio cover two guy?
I don't think so.
Could you imagine them doing that as they decide to transition away from the defense that's been working like mad in recent years, just for the sake of changing to the new that Peyton wants?
Yeah. So, I mean, that season could go one way or the other, but if I had to make a prediction, I don't think it goes all that well this year in Denver. I think they're obviously better than last year, but I don't believe they're a playoff team, especially in that division.
Yeah, Peyton probably gets him into a 7-8 win territory of things, just because he's a good coach, and like you said, the schedule's not treacherous, and they'll lean away from Russ and trying to make him throw high volume amount, so they kind of protect some things. So I do see that them being in that realm a little bit better, but still not what you call Renaissance Garth. I don't know if we can get to Renaissance, but we'll see. Right. Kevin, thank you for the Kevin Low Nice. Thank you for the $10 donation. Very, very kind of you. It says the 2 most feared safeties of the 1980s was Lott and Kenny Easley. Man, they were fun to watch. Go Hawks. Well, go Hawks, Kevin. They indeed, to my money, were the 2 far best safeties of the 80s. I don't think that there were some good safeties behind them, but those were far and away the best. And what made them interesting to me, Brendan, was that these were guys in Lott and Easley that were they were everything that you could want from a safety. The size, ball skills. Could they do man coverage if you had to set them up and do man coverage? Could they play back deep? Could they come and bring the lumber when you needed them to hit, and not just bring the lumber, but hit with a level that like other players in the football field can't. They checked all of those boxes. And of course, Lott is kind of long revered up there with your guys who's out there, like your Ed Reeds, or the best of the best of the best. He might be the best all time by a lot of people's list. Man, I mean, he was so good. He eventually changed to corner later in his career for a while with the Raiders. I think even Lott. Didn't know that. Yeah, when he went to the Raiders, I think Lott actually played some corner for them too. But just guys that could do it all and love the game. Of course, there's that famous story with Lott and having a tip of his finger cut off in halftime and tell him to tape it up and go back out there, just cut off the end of my finger and let's go. Mm. I mean, they were wired differently. Those ones, they were wired differently.
Yeah.
Easley's the most forgotten about great player in Seahawks history. He's the one that people just, and it's understandable because he's so long far back and it's been so long since he played, and because also he didn't have the 12, 13-year career. But it shouldn't minimize how much he was as impactful as he was when he played in the 80s. I mean, he was an outstanding difference maker.
Yeah, I can get behind all of that. And again, it's one of those things where I think you have to really talk to people who watched him play to understand it, because as somebody who obviously didn't watch him play, I didn't really get it. It's almost like a Dick Butkus thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at Dick Butkus, you're like, what's so great about this guy? Like, he was never on any good teams. I don't think he ever made the playoffs. They don't have numbers back then, so you have no idea what his stats were. So you just look at a guy and you're like, well, what's the big deal? And you talk to people who watched him play back then, and they're like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. That guy was an all-timer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that thing that you see on certain guys is that on any given era that stand out to you. They go that there's this guy. It's the old axiom that said, of course, Brendan, that he could play in any era. But I think it's true. There are those guys that are like that, which, you give Kenny Easley modern physical training stuff and all that stuff. I think he could play in this modern era. He would have been built to do so. And just there was no deficiency to his game. There was no hole to his game. And he could be all over the place on the football at any one given time. You never knew where he was going to be or how he was going to be it. He wasn't a center field guy that you just sat back there and waited for overthrows and he's going to pick it off. He's up around the box. He's taking them right flat routes. He's buzzing underneath. And I've gone back and I've put together like a large video eventually I'm going to do. And so I go back and watch a lot of that old tape on that stuff. And it still does show up with him where it's just, the Dolphins game against them. And we were just talking about the conference championship game where, he's out there just, tearing it up and he's all over the place, and hitting everything that moves, just hitting everybody.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. Thank you though, Kevin. Appreciate you. And Megan reacting to your Dave Craig love.
I mean, it's not like I love Dave Craig, but
you're not going to win on this one, brother. You're not going to win on this one. She doesn't differentiate. You crossed the line, man. You crossed the Dave Craig line. There's no gray area with Megan on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I just that 84 season, the numbers that team, I don't know if it's fair to call them like ahead of their time, but that was like a team that you would far more likely see in the modern NFL than back then. And Dave Craig actually was phenomenal that year. If you take a look at the numbers, you take a look at the way he played, it was beyond anything else he did for the rest of his career, I think.
I try to say that to Megan too, but she don't want to hear it. She want to hear it. You caught her off guard on this one too, because you had it built up thinking you're going to start going Zorn route. Here's another $5 from Megan. Thank you for the double dono, Megan. She says, I don't know what's worse, Brendan's love of the migraine-inducing highlighter green jerseys, or the fact he likes Dave Craig.
Yeah. I mean, I used to not. I can't wear this a lot because of the green screen. Yeah, I think that's what people were talking about my shirt in chat earlier because it was blinding people. Because, I mean, it is a flash color. It's like I can't wear this in my normal videos because it'll make my head float in space because it's green screen.
I think that'd be even funnier, dude. Just to start, what's going to happen today at training camp, folks? I don't know.
But yeah, it's not my favorite, I'll say that. But sometimes you want to just get people's attention. Sometimes you just want to make people's eyes hurt. Sometimes you want to drive the bright red car.
Really, you got to change it up, man. They get used to seeing the same face. You gotta get the different shirts and stuff. I got the Bosworth shirt a couple weeks ago. You gotta do what you gotta do here. Another year we're gonna be wearing the big shades, and then they'll just keep getting bigger, like some of those YouTubers. They'll get into just wearing shades 24/7 when they get too cool. I'm like, there you go. But yeah. I don't know what you're gonna do, Megan. I don't know. We just call it like we see it on this one. Craig had himself some good years out there, and Zorn was solid, but
yeah,
Craig kind of got it done. You know what I mean? Kind of got it done.
Yeah.
Thank you though, Megan. Appreciate you. DJ Owen, thank you for the $5 donation. I hope you're having a good night tonight, DJ. Thank you for that. It says, I used to like Jerry Rice until he stole Steve Largent's number.
Yeah, that was a controversial one. I don't know. When it happened, I didn't think that much of it because I remember I was watching football that year. I was super into it. And I remember there was a thing, we signed Jerry Rice, and I was excited because I was a kid and I didn't really understand that he's 58 years old now. And then there was like, oh, Largent gave him permission to use his 20 to use the number 80. Yeah, right, number 80. And I didn't think much of it, but talking to people about it now, it was like a big thing. And some people really don't like it, and I get it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those respect things where like Jerry's showing you like what he thought of Largent versus what he thinks of himself. And you're kind of going into another guy's backyard as you take that mentality, right? It's not one thing when you do it in your own house. It's another thing when you go into somebody else's house and you do it where they're a legend, where they're revered. And yeah, he lied about it, where Steve didn't give him permission to use the number. And then you take that number, which the respect thing would have been, I'm just take 81. Steve's a different guy. This ain't me going to some Cincinnati Bengals and I'm like, hey, I know Chris Collinsworth didn't have 80, but it'd be like that, be like, hey, I know Chris Collinsworth is your number 80 guy here and you don't want to give out that jersey, but like, come on, give it to me. Okay, we'll give it to you. But for Largent, it's a different story there. You should have revered it a little bit more from Jerry's standpoint, understood who he was and that this is a whole different situation. And it speaks to the fact that he didn't call Steve, Brendon. He didn't reach out to him and ask permission because he knew it was wrong. That in itself, the lack of action there and the fact he has to lie about it tells you that he understood that the right thing for me is not to be wearing 80 when I'm putting on the Seahawks colors. Made me look at him in a little bit of a different light as well.
Yeah,
admittedly.
Here's kind of the eternal one for me, and I want your take on this one.
Mm-hmm.
2011, I remember listening to the radio a lot when I was driving home from work, sports radio. And at that time, the Seahawks were bad. That was the Tavares Jackson season. We had a little bit of a second half resurgence, but the first half of the year, we were just bad. Yeah. I think we were 2-6 at one point, and people were talking about, well, what if we get the Andrew Luck pick? At that time, it seemed realistic. If we had gotten Andrew Luck, what happens to 12? Because 12 was his number. What happens there?
Well, you wouldn't give it away. He'd be choosing a different number than 12. Because he's a college guy coming out. He doesn't have even the grab. He doesn't have that the pelts on the wall to be saying, well, I look what I've done and accomplished. So he would have gone to some 2, probably is the number he would have probably gone to at that point. But would have been interesting, man. If you brought Luck here versus where the Colts and got all the hell beat out of him versus us at that time building up an offensive line that actually could have protected him. Would have been a very interesting difference of history at that point, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, what if he indicated that he really liked that number 12? I wonder what you do then, because it's not just any college guy. I wonder what would have happened if that had come to pass, because I don't think you pass up on drafting Andrew Luck because you're worried about the number. But do you just try to wear him down and just say, look, dude, just get another number? Or do you go, you know what, for you, we make an exception? I wonder what would have happened there.
I feel like over the last 30 years, we could probably count on our hands the number of times that a player whose number's been retired has been allowed to be used by any given professional team in any given sport. And I think that should probably instruct us in this case that would have been the hard line on Andrew, where none of those were rookies. Let's say that too. If it's happened 4 times, none of them were guys coming out of college saying, I want that guy who played here for 15 years, who's a Hall of Famer, who's retired, whose number's literally in your stadium. I, who haven't played a single down in this sport, should come in and be able to take that guy's number, even though you retired in that way. I just don't think they would have there's no player that would have that kind of, I don't think even the gall to ask, much less. That's the thing. There's a level of gall to the nature of just asking to do that. This is a respect thing, It's like respect what came before you in every way and form. That's why it's a little egregious here that Jerry did it to me, because it's showing not only not showing respect, it's also kind of you showing disrespect in some of what you did with it. So yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think you would have gotten it, man.
I will say one of my earlier football memories, I'll never forget the Monday night game, Jerry Rice. For one game, he was 27 again.
Oh, he had a couple of games in there with us. That was the one. Yeah, he definitely looked like vintage Rice. As far as his play on the field, he played really good for us. I mean, we needed him that year. We had our receiving core was like our running back room now, where it just kept getting yearly decimated, and you were down to like just begging and pleading to bring somebody in that could, be functional. But Jerry came in still at his age, as old as he was, and still able to get open and make catches and be hard to cover, and good ball skills, strong hands, the things that made him what he was. And there's a reason with Jerry. I know I'm not happy about the number thing, but he is far and away the best receiver in NFL history. And there's not, second place is not close. It's one of I think the bigger differences of first place to second place than any other positions out there in NFL, probably. Maybe Tom Brady, maybe, but aside from that, and I don't even know if Tom's as far away from, like, let's say Joe Montana or somebody of that like, as far as I think Jerry is from who's number 2, Randy Moss, I guess, or
it's got to be like Rice, Moss, T.O., and then probably Antonio Brown, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
And 5th could be Calvin Johnson, Julio. I don't know. 5th is hard, but I feel very confident that's the top 4.
And I think I go to other positions. I think I could just, if I went, tight end, you go, well, is it Kelsey to the guy that was there with the Chiefs, or is Sharp in there? Is there this? Everybody's kind of gets a little close to each other a little bit. There's not that one that's really separated themselves out. Jerry separated himself from the rest of the receivers in NFL history. Just, man, he had like 2.5 careers worth of time. Just tremendous. Garth Knight, thank you again, DJ2, for that dono. Garth Knight with a $5 donation. Thank you, Garth. Says, is it possible that the trade-off of the Orange Cats blessing the health of the Seattle running backs? Brendan and I did a little bit of a ritual situation with my cat to try to tap into the feline powers of psychic persuasion in order to get her to remove the beast mode curse. That's what I have called it. I believe it's real. I believe it's true. You may laugh at me about Brendan, but you know who also laughed about curses? The people in Boston. Took them 50 years to realize the Babe Ruth situation was still impacting them. I think we got to jump on this one a little earlier. So I reached out to my cat to try to see if she could do us a favor.
Doesn't it feel like you got to go to the guy at the top? You got to go to Lynch and get him to do something. Like he's got to be involved somehow, right?
That's my chat was thinking that we needed him with the chicken, Midnight, Lumen Field. Maybe or maybe not, we're going to have to sacrifice a goat too. There's been some back and forth on this within the Seahawks contingent of fans on what's going to be required. But I think we're all in agreement, Brendan, at this point. Desperate times, desperate measures. We need to start taking some more further steps other than let's just fill out a full 4-person depth chart. We'll be fine. No, you won't. No, you won't. And I do hope, for the sake of things, Marshawn's out there this year still working out. Just because, God, I don't know what's going to go on this year with that running back room. It's bit, man.
He's in a movie that comes out in a couple of weeks here.
He's doing things, man. He's doing things. As I was out at Detroit camp today. He's in reality shows, movies, and good for Marshawn, man. He's probably living his best life right now in retirement, just having a ball with it. And yes, Garth, it is possible that then curses the Seahawks offense. I mean, that's what she told me, and what we all know about magic is that, this is the whole thing why you don't make a deal with the devil. Because you might get your deal, but there's always an offset. There's always the negative you get on the other side of it. And so, the negative on this side is unfortunately the Broncos' health, and the offense is going to suck, but our running back room will be healthy. And, it's one of those, like, if you don't see them kind of sacrifices, it doesn't affect you. It's like, you're fine with making it, right? If I don't have to suffer if you're watching the Bronco offense, so be it. Thank you though, Garth. I appreciate all the donations tonight, brother. And sorry I had to do it, man, but it's been 7 years of this running back situation. I can't sit on my hands anymore. I had to call upon all the spirits to make something occur here. Nolan R. Vance with a $5 donation. Thank you, Nolan. Appreciate you as well, man. It's good to see you in the streets. Sorry I got here late. Hey, man. Glad you got in and watched. Anytime you catch it, appreciate it. However, whenever. It says, catch you on the replay and like the stream. Thank you for reminding me on that too. Please, if you do like the stream tonight, guys, do please hit that like button if you could. Helps us out considerably. Helps the channels grow in the ways that we're trying to do so. So me and Brendan would both appreciate if you could do that. But thank you, Nolan. Very kind of you, man. Sorry, go ahead.
And we are trying a new thing tonight where we're streaming to both locations, my channel and the Hawks Nest. So it seems like it's working really well, though, as near as I can tell from my end. Seems like it's working. So hope it's working for everybody out there.
Yes, we're going to be doing that throughout this, I think, year with it. So I hope it is working well on the back and forth with it. But it seems like we're cooking along well with it tonight, and it's good to see. And like being able to do the dual stream. Make sure we got all the eyeballs on, checking it out as you guys do. But thank you, Nolan. Very kind of you dropped the donation in there, and glad you're able to check in the show. Hope you're doing well tonight. Megan come with another $10 donation. Megan, thank you for all your donations tonight. Appreciate my lady from Dan Enda. and hope you're having a good night tonight. Repairing well on that hand. If the team is wearing the green, even on TV, I will get a migraine that will paralyze my entire left. And you have my attention, and not for good reasons. I struggle with the bright greens, man. It's not my favorite. And the fact that I hear, Brendan, we got to get rid of the wolf grays in order to have the highlighter greens.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't look like a football jersey to me at times. It looks like something I'd see on a stage, I guess.
Yeah. The most interesting one to me is the Chiefs jersey, because it looks great on a football field, but it looks very goofy in any other context. Like, you see somebody on the street, like in a Chiefs jersey, they look like Ronald McDonald.
Yeah.
But it's just like on a football field, it's great, but any other context, no. So this jersey stuff, I don't know. I've never been a big jersey person, but you get into it, it's actually kind of interesting.
It is, and I'm not super monstrous on it. I mean, just the highlighter to me just stands out because it's so jarring how it's a lot, it's loud. But it's too, just we have these jerseys in our back pocket, 80s, 90 jersey, throwback jerseys, wolf gray jerseys. Like, we got some tight jerseys that we could be using 24/7 that we don't have to go to the secondhand stuff on. But I can't deny, Brendan, there's a lot of people that like, and Megan, I'm with you on it, but there's a lot of people I've seen in my chat that love those highlighter greens. They're like, don't you take my highlighter green.
Well, are we ever going to do the black jerseys that Bobby wants to do?
Well, we should be. This is what I'm saying. We're keeping a lot of doors closed just so we can have highlighter greens. That's what I'm saying here, Brendan. You're getting to the bottom line here. We got black jerseys, 80s jerseys, 90s jerseys, wolf gray jerseys. We can't call upon any of that because we got to have these highlighters twice a year. I'm just saying, who's asking for it, really? Who really wants it that bad? I especially think once the fans see, you talked about how the Chiefs jersey looks on the field. As much as the fans are loving these throwbacks right now, Brendan, and as much as they're selling off the shores and they're back ordered like nothing else, they're really going to like it when they see it on the TV, because that's going to be a jersey that looks really good, especially at home. It just, the colors fit, the colors match. So I'm stoked too, because that's going to get people, again, just another level of hyped on them when they see them, because they're sweet jerseys, man. They're sweet jerseys.
Yeah, I agree.
But thank you, Megan. I appreciate all the donations tonight. And I know you're now, Brendan's in that same doghouse now that I'm in with the Craig Zorn situation. I know it. It's inevitable. Jose Romero, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you as well. Says, love the show, guys. Do you all have a fantasy league set up where we can join this year? Are you doing any fantasy thing?
I'm in one with a friend, but that's really all I'm doing this year, probably. I don't know. I've been like the Seahawks running back room for 5 straight years when it comes to fantasy. All my guys get hurt, and I end up not having any fun by week 7. I don't know. Fantasy, not really for me.
Understandable too, because I know how busy you are with what you do, and it's fantasy, something that does take a lot of time to kind of dive into. That, do you have the time to carve that out during the season when you're trying to get the videos posted and stay on top of things? It can be a little bit. That's been my challenge. I've also been out of it in recent years. We did have a league sign up that we did, Jose, that we completed out, that we're doing an inner kind of fantasy thing for the channel. So there's nothing there. I'm going to be doing, actually, this, Brendan, is a kind of announcement thing coming down. I'm going to be doing a Saturday show. I got some sponsorship locked down from Underdog Fantasy. So I'm actually going to be doing, Jose, if you want to get on playing me in fantasy, I'm going to be doing some probably you can do custom, everybody throws like a $5 in and you're all fighting out for the 15 or whatever, so it's a week. What's nice about that is it's a week by week thing. So you don't have to set your lineup. They just take the best lineup, and it's not about having to stand that kind of thing with it. And it's weekly. So your lineup changes weekly. You don't have to get stuck on just one, but I'll be doing that stuff, Jose. So if you want to keep an eye on the channel here, I'll be doing the Saturday shows, and we'll probably be doing some inner stuff with the people in the audience as far as that goes on my side of it. But yeah. Use my code NEST at Underdog Fantasy.
Do they let you do that in Washington State, by the way? Because Washington State, I know, is hard on that.
You do. You can't do all of the functionality of the Underdog site, but you can do a big part of it, basically. It's still the big chunkier, meatier part, especially the fantasy stuff. They allow that in there. So you can do that. But use my code Jose Nest on Underdog Fantasy. They'll match you $100 up to $100 on your first deposit in EST. And I'll be doing those Saturday shows, so be on the lookout for that too. Cool. Appreciate you though, Jose. Ran in the cut with a $10 donation. Thank you so very much. He says, 2 more days. It's almost Seahawk football time. Go Hawks. Oh, baby.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. We are inside of 2 days now, right? We're like
Yeah.
45 hours away or something like that.
Yeah, coming up on 44. Yeah, I made a video talking about how close we are, and there were a few people who commented like, I thought it was still like 3 weeks away. I can't believe it's already here.
It's going fast for as slow as that June, late May, early July period went, as we were just like tapping our toes, going, okay, are we almost there yet? Are we almost there yet? We're finally now here. And it feels good, man, Rand. It really does. Both me and Brendan are as excited as we've been in recent years on this team. And you're so interested to see what this team's going to look like on the field, what changes are going to take place, if they're going to take the steps forward in the places of improvement that you wanted to see. And that's why I think the preseason now going to 3 games, Brendan, has become a little more important than in the past. Because they're in that 4th game. There is just these 3 in and out. I know that there's not a lot of playing starters in recent years, and but sometimes it's the backups going in there that you need to get more solidified on your understanding of what they are, who they are, and where they fit in, isn't it?
Yeah, you still need the preseason. Absolutely. I think that there are some fans out there that would be in favor of abolishing the preseason entirely, but you need this. This is an important part of the process, and I'm excited for it. And I think a lot of people on my channel who post on my videos and are in my Discord are also very excited about it as well.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I think there's going to be some stuff you're going to be able to learn about this team in the preseason on top of that, and walk away from feeling good, bad, indifferent. The other, you'll have a little bit more of a firmer feel on where they are and what they're doing with it. So we'll see how it goes, man. But Ran the Cut, I'm glad you're hyped up. We're hyped up too, man. 2 more days, and we're going to take on those Vikings. It's going to be skull time, you know, and not in a good way for those horned bastards, those horned bastards.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Ran. Upo with another $5 donation says Reggie White may have a greater distance between him and the next best guy at his position than Rice. Maybe. I'm open to be convinced otherwise.
Well, assuming you separate Rice from Lawrence Taylor, because one was a 3-4 outside linebacker and one was a 4-3 end, right?
I guess, but can you do that? I mean, they're basically the same position when it all breaks down, aren't they?
Yeah, I kind of feel like they are. So I don't even feel like Reggie White's in first place in that position. But if you do that, do you think that Reggie White was that much better than like Bruce Smith?
I'm just bringing it up right now to your point on this. Bruce Smith had 200 sacks playing from 1985 to 2003. Reggie White playing from 1985 to 2000, so 3 years less than Bruce Smith, had 198 sacks. So was Reggie White a little more efficient in his production to a tiny degree? Yes. But was it enough of a difference-making standpoint from, him to the next guy in that realm of things? No. Jerry Rice is at what, 17, 18,000 yards receiving. The next guy's at like 12, 13. There's a monstrous distance, Upo, between those two there. So you could even throw to me, Reggie, beyond Reggie White. What about Deacon Jones? I can't include Deacon Jones. They weren't counting sacks back then. Yeah. He doesn't get to be brought up into it as far as being a guy who should be considered in this realm too. I think he should. So there's a couple guys in there with Reggie that, I don't think you can take Daryl to LT off. I think you can't, because they both do the same sort of thing just because they're playing different defense. They're basically, there's about a yard of space between the where they're lining up from, and they're both going at the tackle. That's what they both attack. So it's, say there's a difference, but even if you want to throw that out, to me, maybe he's better than Bruce Smith, but is he more better than Bruce Smith than Jerry Rice is of Calvin Johnson or of AB or
Randy Moss?
Yeah, Randy Moss. No, I think Rice got those guys by a good margin. And I don't say this, by the way, Upo. I don't say this because I'm happy by it. I'm not a big Rice. I'm bitter about the thing with the Largent thing a bit, and he broke Largent's record, which hurt my little child heart growing up, because Largent was the hero guy for me. So there's no love lost for me with Reggie, with Jerry, but he was on a different level. Before Tom Brady came along, he was looked at as the guy that was the GOAT in this sport.
I got one. How about Devin Hester?
For the Hall of Fame?
No, best player at his position by a margin over whoever's second place. Because everybody knows Hester's the greatest returner ever, and it's not particularly close.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's got a little more longevity than like a Gale Sayers, who was, I think, just as impactful. But you and I had that talk about Gale on your last stream where I got to be consistent here. If I'm going to say I don't want to give him a ton of credit for lack of longevity, I've got to be that way there. I think I'd have to do a deeper dive on the returners for sure, because there's been some return specialist guys who have been pretty good at what they do and very productive. I think Hester is definitely the brightest of the bunch. But there's maybe an argument to be made. He might be a more bigger separator at that point for what he did. I could be more convinced of that probably than any other position that's out there. I don't think that there's a guy that's, even if I put a Deion Sanders my best corner, like I could find corners that are going to be kind of close to him, especially when you factor in the tackling element of things. A middle linebacker, maybe Ray Lewis, the next guy behind him, you might. Because Lewis's production was insane, really.
Yeah.
If you look at him versus other guys. So there's maybe some other guys that do have some other places where there's a pretty big draw between them and first. But I've always looked at the thing between Jerry. I mean, think about this here now. He retired 20 years ago. The sport's done nothing but throw the ball all over the football field, all that much more. Players are more protected than ever from injury. And yet nobody can come in within sniffing distance of 5,000 yards of him. That to me is pretty telling at that point from what he did,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what makes a lot of those old time players that achieved those things all the more amazing.
Yeah.
That's what makes what Dan Marino did all the more amazing when he did it.
Yeah.
That's what makes Don Maynard, especially, like Don Maynard was, I think, lapping the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Like he would have these years where he would lead the league with like 1,200 receiving yards. Second place would have like 550.
Yeah. And this is where you can factor the greatness of the old into this. If they're in the greatness of the old, they were such not just difference makers, but like you say, lapping the field. That's where now I can start to measure that up against a guy in modern times that has more of a high volume attack approach to things. And now, is it all going to be arbitrary at the end of the day and trying to put lists together? In fact, yeah, but do those guys have a place at the table to be considered as in that realm of that greatness? They do, for that reason. And it should be considered with it.
Right. That's the only way you can do it. It's really hard to do this otherwise. Like, how am I going to compare George Mikan to Shaquille O'Neal? How am I going to compare shoeless Joe Jackson to Mike Trout? Like, you can't.
Yeah. No, it's very hard. It's very hard at the end of the day. It's a fun exercise, but it gets tough. I think there are ways you can come to affirm strong arguments one way or the other on it, but nothing ever is, solved with different errors in that range of things. Reggie was a great player, though. Don't get me wrong, Upo. He was a fantastic player, but there's been some great edges, man. Megan with another $5. Thank you, Megan. Says, not Jersey fans. What's next, boys? 78 in my collection from most sports and 2.5 closets full.
Yeah, I maybe could get into collecting. I don't like wearing jerseys. They don't feel good to me. I don't like how they're on my shoulders. I don't know. Like collecting I could get into, but as of right now, I do not.
I went to the game day jersey ones where they cut off they got a little bit of the cut off around the edge so that they fit a little bit more, rounded down. I'd like some of that too. We're analysts here, Megan. We pride ourselves on being truthful, honest, and forthright. And if we have to, provide an opinion on particular players of old and our viewpoint of them in their place in Seahawks history, the people expect us to a certain standard here, Megan, and we got to hold to it. Both me and Brendan do, and
I like baseball jerseys though. I like the buttons. I have a Julio jersey.
Well, those fit better though too. They round. They don't make you feel like you're wearing like the women in the 80s used to wear the shoulder pads in their power suits. Remember that?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you feel like you're wearing the shoulder pads without the shoulder pads, not in the cool way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Now the baseball ones fit nice, man. Those are
I like the baseball ones.
They form down really well. So no, we like the jersey, man. We do. We got to keep it real above all else. That's the guiding light. Gar, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, I forget what game it was UW wore those shiny gold helmets last year, but that look was clean. I like the big B-Wags idea of the black jerseys, though.
Yeah, some of the college jerseys are cool. Like they tend to be a little more creative, and oftentimes they do produce some really cool products.
They really do. I still always do go back to the UW early 90s uniform. I thought they had perfectly done right. Like that was to me the best. But I don't mind with college them flipping it up, having fun with it, not taking it too seriously of we got to keep the same thing. There shouldn't be a rigid approach to that in my opinion on those. So I like where they're at with that stuff too, Garth. The UW jerseys are always usually, no matter even what they're kind of doing a weird offshoot, they're pretty tight no matter what. They just always have good color scheme, and they seem to be pretty good with that. But when it comes to the black jerseys, I mean, it doesn't matter, does it? Like you can't mess up doing your team's jerseys in black. Like that's always going to look good.
Yeah.
You'd have to have like Barney as a logo on the front to mess up black jerseys.
Yeah. Black jerseys are pretty undefeated.
Yeah. I don't think we'll get it though. I know Bobby was pining for it, but it took us 20 years to twist their arm behind their back to get 2 games of retro jerseys for a single given season. I don't think we're getting black jerseys anytime soon, unfortunately.
I mean, it was for Bobby, if anybody, and this may be his last year in the NFL, so it's kind of too late now for him, at the very least.
Yeah. Well, maybe go out and have a great year, and they'll be like, Bobby, come back one more year. We'll get the black jerseys in. You said you wouldn't. You had to keep playing until you played the black jerseys, technically, Bobby. See Coach Carroll having that argument with him. Like, you said, Coach, I'm done. My body's done. One more year. One more year, Rock. And be like Rocky. Right? Come on, Rock. Come on, Bobby. Yeah. One more year.
Yeah. I mean, I believe he probably could. I think it's a matter of want to at that point, but we'll see how he plays this season.
It'll be interesting to see how he tracks, and it depends on certainly how Seattle chooses to use him, whether he's put in a position for success or not. But he maybe still could, especially if they do put him in that right position. He could still be moving even beyond this year to come back another year, which I wouldn't mind seeing, especially considering we're probably going to have to deal with the other linebacker position this next offseason already. So to have that in the back pocket wouldn't be the worst thing, rather than have to find 2 new ones at the same time, which would be a little bit tougher. Though the middle linebacker class looking pretty good.
Yeah, I've been looking at it a little bit. It's a lot better than last year or this year.
The last couple of years, probably.
Well, 2 years ago was really good. That was the one where you had like Quay Walker, you had Damon Clark as like a 5th rounder. That was actually a good class. The Utah guy who went to Jacksonville. I can't remember his name, but Devin Lloyd.
Yep.
Yeah, I really liked Lloyd. That was a good class. I don't think this one's that good, but it's good.
Yeah, we'll see. My first view, I have liked it quite a bit, and I think that there's going to be, in my opinion, Brendan, right now, I think there's 3 first rounders in this middle linebacker class. I think both the Clemson kids go in the first round, and I think the Ohio State kid goes in the first, is just kind of where we're walking into a little bit. If it holds the type, it'll be interesting to see, but I might like even a little bit more new on that, where we're standing right now.
Stay tuned for our college football prospect preview show later this month.
That's true. We're going to be talking. We're not waiting until the off season on these guys. We're going to be talking about them throughout the course of the year. I mean, Brendan getting up ahead of these guys. So we'll be giving you guys updates and talking about these guys as part of the show here. So strap on in. Thank you, though, Garth, for the donation. And Megan, thank you for all your donations tonight as well. Very, very kind of you. She says, B, you do know the Vikes are my 3rd team, right? Well, they may be your 3rd team on a normal occasion, but they'll be your last team on Thursday. Okay. You're a Seahawk on Thursday. So it's death to the Vikings. We're downing their ships. Aim those cannons right upon them. I don't care preseason or not. We got to set a tone here, Megan. We got to set a tone for winning. We got to set a tone for a championship run. And we don't do that by taking it lightly on guys just because they wear Hornet helmets. They got to go down, and they got to go down hard this Thursday. I just want us just 44-0. We beat on Cousins, so he's only out there one drive, and they're just like, dear God, get him off the field. No more of this.
Yeah, I mean, we're a year away from Cousins being a 49er, so we got to start planning ahead of time here. We got to make him fear us.
Oh, you're thinking long term. I was going to say he was going to be a Niner by mid-season, but you're going full round, huh?
Wow, that would be interesting.
I was already talking. I talked to Jesse, who does the last season of the Niner channel that I talked to, and I had some fun. I had a lot of fun with a little bit of the prodding of pushing him on the quarterback issue, because right now that's such a sensitive subject in Niner land. It's like it's causing civil war within their own community in a major way, and so but he's already like, we're talking about Cousins and how much of a goober he looks on that quarterback show, or maybe it's just my take. That was my view of it. I don't know. I just was like, no, you're not going to be my starting quarterback. I know how productive he's been. I know he's underrated, and I know everybody's now like suddenly pro Cousins, but I'm just there going, no, no. And he's over there already starting to go, well, I mean, he's really, when you do watch, I had actually a lot more, respect for him after watching him. And I'm going, really? Or have you already started to make a little bit of peace with what is, as the man said in the Matrix, inevitable, right?
Yeah, it just feels like the perfect match, right? Shanahan back with his guy Cousins. You've got the fact that he's a free agent after this season. The Trey Lance thing seems dead on arrival. Like it's just going to happen, isn't it?
Every young boy wants his blankie, but sometimes you need to grow beyond your blankie and learn to go be a big boy. And Shanahan, if he goes and he does that, mark my words upon it, it will be a move that does not work in the Niner favor and probably will be the move that cements him as moving on out of town. And I think he's a bright young coach. I think he's a guy that's got a lot of upside as a coach. I think he's also a guy that might have Achilles heels that keep him from reaching coaching greatness a little bit. But that would be such, to me, not the right move for them to make. But I think you're right to believe that this is where they're going with it, because this is where signs point to. And if you look at the Niners and their situation, won't have a lot of money to spend, won't have a draft pick to go up there and take a quarterback high, don't have the time to wait on a young quarterback to develop. So now you're looking for the veteran quarterback in next year's market that could be there. Who would it be? And this is, of course, I guess you're not in on Brock Montana working out, I guess, right?
No, I don't think he's good.
So, yeah, I think that leads them into the arms of Kirk Cousins, and your blankie's not going to work, Shanahan. Sorry, it's not the right call. But it'd be funny if they have a weird quarterback situation. They call up Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of in that weird in between territory this year, where they're some people, they might be good and they might be really bad. Like the Vikings could be really into it. They're kind of hard to pin down for me a little bit in my outlook of them. There's a couple of those teams this year where I'm a little like Vikings, Saints. I'm not really sure, Panthers even. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be as teams. There's a big variance, I feel like, between the outcomes for them this year as teams that isn't there for other teams.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty fair assessment. Maybe the Broncos are in that list too. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see them as a high variance team, because they could be easily a 3-win team or a team that gets out to 10 wins and slot just fights, claws, scratches their way, runs the ball down everybody's throat into getting into the playoffs. They certainly could be in that mode. I could see that. Chad Hart, thank you for the $5 donation. I do appreciate you, Chad. It says, "Go Hawks, brother. I'm going to purchase a coffee mug. I'm liking that new Hawks Nest logo. I really appreciate all the videos." Well, thank you, Chad. And yeah, we got I've got the Etsy store going now here, Brendon, full steam. So we got the new logo redone, got the Etsy store going with all the little stuff in there, and it's going well. Got a couple purchases that have rolled through. So we'll keep expanding on that store there, Chad. We'll keep getting more going on it. And yeah, I went and got the logo redone, Brendon, so I could sell this stuff without it being copywritten stuff. Got the new deal on there.
Yeah, I've thought about doing merch stuff. Maybe I should look into that a little bit more.
And I'll talk to you about it offline, because there is a way to set it up to where, you just don't want to do the overhead side where you got some fee hitting you every month and you don't know if you have the sales or not. Right. So there's a way to get around that, and I'll hit you up with that offline, but I think it's a smart way to go, because people want some merch, man. They want the swag, we're in a swag world, man. You know what I mean? We're in a swaggy world. But thank you, Chad, for getting the coffee mug. I appreciate you on that, man. Thank you for the $5 donation. And I appreciate you so much. Yeah, the Fiverr guy did a good job. He went and did the Fiverr on the relogo. He did a really good job. I was like, I was really happy with it.
Mm-hmm. I used Fiverr for my logo too, but it's still pretty Seahawky, so I don't know if I could put it on merch. So
I wasn't sure on taking the risk, and I was like, should I just run it through an Adobe program and kind of slightly adjust it, and that'll be enough? But you just don't want to be in the line with that, because they'll come down on you hard if you're on the wrong end of it. So yeah, but Fiverr does good stuff. If you find the right guy on there, they do. It doesn't cost you a lot, and they'll do some pretty nice, solid work out there. Thank you though, Chad. I do appreciate you, man. Upo, thank you for the $2 donation. It says, "Good research on Reggie White. You convinced me." Oh, thank you, Upo. I appreciate that, man. And I love. Don't get me wrong, too, but Reggie White's one of my all-time favorite edges. There, I think when you talk about the conversation of the best all-time, you cannot have that conversation without Reggie White being included. He cannot be left off in any way. And if you have 10 guys all putting their vote in there, Reggie's going to get 3, 4, 5 votes probably.
Right.
before some of the other guys. So he's still used to, I think that still was a great suggestion on your part as far as a guy that might be in that difference making place. So there's really an argument to be made. There ain't a lot of guys around 200 sacks in NFL history, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like we're getting another one anytime soon. Like, I guess we got a couple of guys who they're still so young, though. So much can go wrong. It's just kind of weird that with all the passing in the modern game, we're not really seeing the long-term elite sack artists the way that we did back then. Like Von Miller isn't going to get close to those guys, I don't think. DeMarcus Ware was kind of the modern version of that, but he didn't get that close to those guys. Bosa and Parsons have a chance, but it just seems like things just go wrong for these guys when they turn 31 or 32.
It does seem like that. It seems like there's always a major injury that comes in that diminishes them in some way, even if they remain effective, but then robs them at the end of the longevity train of things. I think too, the money that's at play here, when you're 30 and you've made 120 million in contracts through 2 or 3 deals you've had through your career, how motivated are you at 33 to go out there for another 5-6 years to get to that 200 sack mark, and beat your body up in that way when you already have that money in the bank so you can make 180 versus 120. It's probably, it would get that way for me. I don't know about you, but I start getting to that funny number point. I'm like, legacy's nice, but I'd like to be able to enjoy my body for the next 50 years as I enjoy this money. I maybe don't want to walk with a limp 24/7. And I know that's always the case that you have to make that call with it, but certainly you're getting some extra wear and tear if you go that extra 4 or 5 to get to that spot. You're right, though. It's not getting broken anytime soon, man. Nobody's coming down and disrupting that 200 sack point. It'd have to be one of these young guys like Parsons or Bosa or something that just burst in and instantly productive, and then just they're going to have to do it in a shorter time, I guess. What I'm saying, they'll have to do like a 10-year period, get over that 200 sack, where it's like 20 sacks a year almost every single year.
Yeah.
Thank you, though, Upo. Appreciate you, man. Megan, thank you for all of your donations tonight. I really do appreciate you. She says, got my Kraken custom jersey on. Brendon, ask Brendon about it.
Kraken jersey.
Well, the Kraken jerseys, to me, they resemble almost what you would put on a king prior to some, ball or something. Like they're like finely embroidered. I feel like there's flecks of gold that are interwoven into the fabric. Those things are the most impressive jerseys as far as just like the quality of what you see on them when they're put together, like of any jerseys. They go over the top on those NHL jerseys, man. Those things are like, I don't know how you wear them. It's like you got to put them behind glass or like little works of art or something. But I was impressed, man. I said, she sent me pictures like, man, those things are next level. Definitely beyond football and baseball jerseys.
I never really thought about it like that, but that is pretty good.
They're pretty tight. Megan with another $2 donation. Thank you, Megan. Says the Vikes head coach is stunning too. That's why they're your third team. You got the crush on the head coach.
And he's a really good coach too. He's kind of like that's kind of why, even though I understand why they did it, what the Broncos did with the Sean Payton thing doesn't really make that much sense to me in general. I think for them it's okay because they need a solution now, but it just seems like the league is full of guys like Kevin O'Connell that you can just find and hire, and they're going to be really good coaches because they're these, whiz kids. I feel like there are the guys like that all over the place these days.
I think that you're definitely onto something with this. There's a lot of, I think a lot of the older coaches and the old guard got kind of pushed out in this realm, where this is because this was starting to take over more and more. And maybe McVay was as much the real fire starter on this one with what he's done. And that really then started to, really open that up for people to say, okay, let's let the floodgates go to the younger coaches and try to trust these guys, especially when it comes to, I think, relating to the younger players, which are a whole new kind of breed of guys and the way that they operate and the phones and the social medias and the personal brands and all that other stuff. But yeah, it seems like it's more now. It used to be for a while, Brendan, it seemed like, didn't it, 10, 15 years ago, it was more about retread, recycle. One coach fired here, he'll be hired here. And now it's more about them looking for kind of the next bright young coach, the next guy that's going to be the one to, be the difference maker as a coach and, moving forward, which is good. It's kind of cool to see. It's good to see, let new guys get the opportunities. And, we were thinking about this, I think last week, Brendan, we were trying to think about this. There is really not a lot of the old guard coaches out there. There isn't a Mike Shanahan that's sitting out there without a job right now, who is still coaching, who's been having a lot of success in recent NFL history, who's just readily there and available to be hired if you do need to go get another head coach. So that to me will only start to push this more further in the direction of younger coaches, newer coaches, newer ideas in that and whatnot.
I mean, Peyton was the retread who was waiting for a coaching job, and he got hired. So that was it. Like that was the. Like I don't think Dungy's coming out. I don't think Cowher's coming out. I don't think any of those guys would take a coaching job. So
I don't either. And I agree with you on it, is that I understand why the Broncos did it, and maybe it will work and they'll be able to sort of, like the end of Star Wars 1, where you've got to go down through the little tight little path with Vader chasing you and you got to shoot the thing right into the small little tiny hole. Maybe that Peyton's able to do that with Russ, but the degree of difficulty involved here, and considering the way the situation looked from the outside in, to me, and considering, of course, you had to give up the first round pick for Peyton, you had the Peyton pick and then the money you had to spend on top of it. Yeah. A bit more of an argument to be made to go a different direction with the younger coach and maybe just move off the Wilson thing at that point, give the new coach an opportunity for success by not marrying him then to an old coach, but that would have been an extreme step, and obviously one that would have probably been one to just too much pain there. Having to feel like you cut your arm off there at that point. And maybe Peyton can pull it off, man. Maybe he is just that good of a coach. If he does, he'll definitely earn marks. But to your point, though, the Kevin Connell, his star is rising too. He's a guy that's really in high consideration around the league for what he's done there with the Vikings and how he comes off and his manner and his ability to run offenses. So he's a guy to watch into the future. It's why he's one of the main reasons right now in the Vikings, where my head goes, Brendan, they're going to fall back to earth this year. They were the most paper thin 13-win teams you'll ever see in recent history in the NFL. Like, they were nowhere near equal to that when you watched them on the field, as evidenced by losing to the Giants at home in the playoff game in the first opening round. But maybe I'm wrong on this one too, and maybe they are a little bit better than I give them credit for in that respect of things.
Yeah. Every game they played was a coin flip. It came up heads a lot in the regular season, and then it came up tails in the playoffs. I think that's basically the way to put it.
Mm-hmm. It is true. And if you're in every game like that, it doesn't mean you're getting blown out. It doesn't mean does mean that then chances are next season you're going to probably be in every other game. So we'll see where the coins flip on that, this given year. They need Addison, the kid they took out of USC, to be good. They need somebody to take the pressure off of Jefferson, because he's going to pull those double teams in, and somebody else is going to have to be productive.
Yeah. By the way, really easy bet to win the receiving title this year, Justin Jefferson. Whatever the odds are, they're not low enough. Go load up on that.
I'm probably with you on that. I don't see who else will overtake him this year, and he's going to get he'll literally get probably 225 targets by the end of the year. So he's guys probably going to push around 2,000 yards and probably 130 catches or something like that. And yeah, that'd be a good pick to go with. Can't go wrong with the Jefferson train on that one, man. All right. Well, we got caught up on the donations, and I know we just basically have, I think, covered most of the stuff you and I were trying to kind of cover today's particular show. Was there anything else with this Viking game that you're looking at that people should be on the lookout for or be paying attention to? I've got one little thing myself.
I don't really have too much else. It's kind of one of those things where we don't even really know who's going to play, so it's hard to say too much more than just speaking generally. I mean, Gino might play. He probably won't, but he could. DK might play. Lockett might play, or they don't play, or maybe Wagner plays. Maybe we don't even when you don't even know that much, it's kind of hard. But generally speaking, I feel like I said what I could say.
Yeah, I think the two little things I'd say for audience members out there to look for that I think are going to be interesting to see if we see unwrapped a little bit here are the screen game offensively, bubble screens, traditional screens. Do they try to work on that a little bit more, because that's been a bit of the bugaboo in recent years and trying to make that work? And then defensively, do we see some more of the blitzes we saw from scrimmage game? Do we see more of those stack boxes down there? I think if they're doing that, Brendan, would you not agree that that's an indication of not just them trying to play around with things, but we want to try to make this thing work a little bit. Jamal at the forefront of this, and Julian Love working in there, the 3 safety looks. We want to try to bring some of this pressure-based packages down here and get these offenses feeling uncomfortable at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I'll go for that too. That's another thing that, like, the personnel, the players you have on the field doesn't really matter that much. It's, are you implementing this system that includes things like more blitzing or more man coverage or more 3 receiver sets. So I can get behind that for sure. And I think it needs to happen. I think it plays to our strengths, like we've said.
I think too, if you don't see it, then it seems like to me it would not be an indication they're probably going to run it in season very much, because you got to work on it. You got to be good at it. And you only get on that by practicing in pads with it, live action. And so there's the other thing I've seen with this in recent history, Brendan, is that it's gone from teams 30 years ago who would, there'd be like this common gentleman agreement of you never blitzed because you weren't trying to get your other quarterback killed, to now teams are blitzing 24/7 in the preseason. They'll blitz with reckless abandon to work on stuff. And so I think you should try to do that. Hopefully we see that. And if they do, I will take that as an encouraging sign that the team's going to start to try to implement that this year a little bit more, which I think will help this defense out. It will help the defense both stop the run and help them to also create some manufactured pressure at times, which would be nice to see. I think something that's been missing in recent years.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, Madden used to say that in the preseason, if you ran a bootleg, it would work every time because of the way defenses played. I remember Madden had this thing where like you will score a touchdown every 3 plays without fail if you just bootleg every single play in the preseason, because defenses are completely unprepared to handle that. Not the case anymore.
No, it was vanilla. I mean, I remember there was times back in the day that you weren't even really getting a play call from defenses. It was just, come off the ball and just go make a play, is basically what you had them do. So it was, you used to try to hold everything close to the vest prior to coming in the year. But I think now you've seen teams being a little more willing to, and rightfully so. You don't have the padded practices as much. You don't have the 2-a-days. You don't have all of that stuff where you might have used to have been able to unfurl that before. Now you've got only this small little 3, not even 4 preseason games. Now you only got this small 3 preseason game period to kind of get that stuff, all the kinks worked out a little bit. And so I hope that they are doing it, Brendan. But if they don't, I think the other end of it does inform us a little bit of that the team's not going to maybe be looking to lean on the pressure-based packages. Maybe they'll be leaning on the 3 safety looks. Maybe there'll be some 3-3-5s, maybe all that other stuff. But they won't be actually probably leaning more into, kind of the heavy blitz game for this upcoming season. Just something interesting to monitor this upcoming week here on Thursday for the Vikings game. I will be on my end of it live. Are you live streaming the Vikings game on your side?
No, I'm doing the Cowboys game.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. I can't do this Vikings game, but I am. It looks like anyway, I'm doing the Cowboys game. I ran a poll, asking people which one they wanted to see, and it looks like it is going to be that Cowboys game.
Fantastic. Well, I will be live streaming Thursday, the Viking game on my side of it here on the Hawks Nest. Brendan will be live streaming on the Cowboys game thereafter, I guess, just after or a couple hours later.
Next, Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday. So he'll be doing that on his end. If you're not already, please do me this favor. Go over there to Seahawks Brendon Nelson, YouTube channel here, and do get subscribed up to him. Me and Brendan this year will be doing 2 shows a week here with both of our channels rolling here. We're going to be doing some draft coverage, very early on coverage of these college prospects. We're going to be kind of expanding some other elements here on the show this year as we go through. So hopefully you guys are riding with us throughout this upcoming year. Brendan, thank you as ever, man, for coming on here. I do really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
We got Roxanne Roll in the house. Roxanne's been a member of the Hawks Nest for 25 months. That is quite a long time, Roxanne. Thank you for that long time dedication to the channel. She says, just checking in and playing a lot of catch up to your chat, B, and good to see you, B, as well. Go Hawks. Well, thank you so much, Roxanne. I appreciate your longtime support of the channel, as I know you're one of my original channel members, original subs to the channel as well. So I appreciate you for that long-time dedication in here and checking it out as you do. And thank you, Brendan, for coming on in here, man. I always have fun chopping it up with the Hawk Talk with you on this. And I look forward to what's going to hopefully be a real fun season for us to be able to get into the depths on this and, hopefully be talking about the most successful season we've seen from a Seahawks team going in 10 years. That wouldn't be the worst thing at all, would it? Nothing wrong with that.
That can happen.
Well, my name is Brendan. This guy's name is Brendan. We'll be coming back to you next week on Tuesday with a little bit of a wrap up on his side. I'll be doing some other shows before that. But until that time, I hope we don't have to let you guys know. I hope on a season like this where there's so much hope, there's so much people with starry eyes all over the place. I hope I wouldn't have to remind you, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway because that's just what we do here. Please don't you ever forget. Never, ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.